They apparently have taken my gavel away, so I'm going to just go ahead and call this meeting to order. The Planning Board, Marvin Planning Board meeting of May 20th, 2025. We have a quorum. We are missing John. Sorry? At 6:02 p.m. Thank you. We don't have anyone participating remotely, and so if we could get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
And all in favor? All right, so moved. And adoption of the previous minutes. I do have just one minor change to the minutes. Now my notes are not in there. I think at the top of page 6 in paragraph 1, I don't know if it was an AI thing, but it states it's instead of Moore and Van Allen, it says Moren, M-O-R-E-N, so it's Moore, M-O-O-R-E, and Van Allen. So we just need to correct that. I mean, it's not a major thing, but yeah. Yeah. So it did it phonetically and not, yeah. So I'm sure they would appreciate if we corrected their name. Anyone else have any other questions or changes for the previous minutes? And if there are none, if we could make a motion to approve as slightly amended?
I'll make a motion to adopt the previous meeting minutes as slightly amended.
It's a technical term. All in favor? Aye. Good. And before we move on to public comment, I just wanted to welcome everyone here. I don't know why it's like no one's here for the bride. There's like I don't know what y'all have against that side of the room, but I know, I'm sorry, dude, yeah. I don't know, what was it okay after you did that? So thank you all for being here. I just want to remind everyone that this is an official meeting, and we have official duties as planning board members, as volunteers, and fellow neighbors of yours. So if we could there should not be any calling out. Please do not comment during the meeting. We do have a public comment period. That is for you to voice your opinions. We cannot respond to you. If you say something that's actually incorrect, we cannot even correct you or give you additional information. We just sit and listen, and we take it all in. So, but please use that public comment time. That is for you. Please do not use it when we are actually discussing, when people are presenting, because it is a misdemeanor if you call out and you do not. We ask you to please be quiet, and you do it again. Oops. We do have to ask that you are removed, and I don't want to do that. So plenty of you guys have been here multiple times. I don't like the conflict. So if everyone could please keep those thoughts to yourself. We call that, with students, they say, it's your inside head voice. You say them in your head, not with your mouth. So don't make me tell you to put a bubble in your mouth, because that would just be demeaning. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What's that? Oh, yes, and please silence your phones. Most people keep their phones on vibrate, but if you are hard of hearing, please turn it on silent.
Just for the record, John Jones has joined us online. He is on Zoom up there.
Oh, do we need to then go back and approve online participation?
You
okay.
do.
So we're going to skip back up. So thank you, everyone, for being here and for following the rules. We need to consider John being allowed to participate remotely, so I will make a motion to approve John as a remote participant. All in favor? What was it, Ken? That was your silent eye?
No, I said not quite.
Oh, see. All right, so moved. All right, John. Hello, friend. Okay, now we are at public comments, and Austin, so I don't see the time. Okay, what's the time limit for public comment?
I can go through the rules like usual if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay. A maximum of 30 minutes.
Can everybody hear him?
A maximum of 30 minutes shall be allocated to hear from the public during the public comment period. Speakers shall sign up on the sign-up sheet at the entrance to the council chambers before the meeting is called to order. No individual will be permitted to address the board if they do not sign up to speak prior to the start of the meeting. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers shall approach the podium and state their name and address when addressing the board. Speakers must be civil in language and presentation and act within reasonable standards of courtesy. Use of slander, name-calling, personal attacks, or threatening speech or behavior is prohibited. The board may designate or ask for spokespersons for groups supporting or opposing the same positions. The board shall not engage in debate or commentary with residents during the public comment period. The audience must maintain order and decorum in their conduct and must refrain from disruptive applause, comments, or disorderly speaking during the meeting. Any person who interrupts, disturbs, or disrupts an official meeting is guilty of a misdemeanor. A person who interrupts a meeting and is asked to leave the meeting by the presiding officer and refuses is also guilty of a misdemeanor. So we are good to start.
Thank you, and I apologize. There was one thing I did want to give information on before we go to public comment. We do have a rezoning application that will be voted on tonight, and just to help educate our members of the audience and to clear up any misunderstandings or confusion, the Marvin Planning Board, we are a group of citizens. We volunteer. This is an advisory committee. What we say is just advice to the council, and the council then goes and votes as well. And then if it is approved before the rezoning gets approved, but before any construction happens, it then goes to a bunch of different agencies. So DEQ, so the Department of Environmental Quality in Union County, they actually do a lot of permitting and approval. NCDOT has to weigh in. There are things that happen if there are jurisdiction in wetlands. Army Corps of Engineers gets triggered. The State Historic Preservation Office gets triggered. So there are a bunch of different organizations that are involved once a rezoning happens. So it is not all on Marvin. There are a bunch of checks and balances. There are a bunch of different people from the county to the state that look at different applications before anything can start. So please be aware of that. And it is not, a lot of these are also conditional rezonings, and so they are under very strict rules and regulations on what can be and cannot be developed and how it is developed. I hope that is helpful, and if anyone has any questions, we are happy to talk afterwards, or you can always refer questions to Hunter, and he'll do his best to get back to you. He's one person that is very busy, so but please feel free to educate yourself on the ordinances, so when you hear things, it's not misinformation. All right, you want to call our first public comment?
Some people that signed up did not include their address. In the future, please do that. That way we don't have to try to Google you later and try to figure out where you live for the record.
And if you accidentally signed up and you didn't want to speak, you just thought you had to sign in, that's not actually what that's for. So just let us know.
First up is Caroline Katz, 225 Tyndale Court.
And Caroline, can you just tell us which project you're speaking on?
Hi, yes, I'm speaking
Is the mic on?
Oh, it's not on.
I'm speaking about the development at the corner of Ray Road and Tom Short.
Thank you.
Okay, does my time start now?
Yes.
Good evening, my name is Caroline Katz, and I live in Somerset, which borders the proposed development at Ray Road and Tom Short. I want to express serious concern about the proposed 20-foot buffer between this new development and the existing neighborhood of Somerset, something addressed in this petition here that I shared with some of the board members. Under the current Union County permit granted to Rayleigh Miller, the development is required to provide a 60-foot buffer with screening. We strongly urge Marvin to match that standard, or at a minimum, we ask that Marvin not go below the current standards outlined in Marvin's own development ordinances and resist any amendments made at the request of developers. And Somerset be shown the same level of consideration that went into similar developments, such as the buffer between Weddington Chase and Marvin Gardens. The intent of a buffer is to provide meaningful separation and protection between developments of differing intensities. 20 feet is not a buffer, it's not much more than a strip of grass. This is not fair to the families who already live here and what we fought for in the past, and it does nothing to mitigate noise, visual impact, light pollution, or drainage. I passed out some of these photos, they're numbered in order for your reference. This shows the side of a house at the end of Tyndale Court, this red line here. This red line demonstrates 20 feet from that house where the new development will start. This is across the street, the other house on the end of Tyndale. And this edge of the house is the property line. That line is 20 feet, only behind that first row of very sparsely planted trees. This is the end of Tyndale Court. The red lines represent where the 20-foot buffer is. It's approximately 40 feet from the cul-de-sac. That's actually equidistant from my home and the other homes on the cul-de-sac. So these new, larger homes will be the same distance on our cul-de-sac. This image is the end of Tintin Hill Court. This kind of little puffy tree here shows where the townhomes will be at the end of Tintin Hill. Sorry, I left y'all out. That actually goes uphill, and those town stories are proposed to be 3 stories, so they'd be towering over the existing homes on Tintin Hill. This is behind Whittingham. This is where townhomes will go. This kind of finger pointing here demonstrates where the 20-foot buffer would be. There is a small downhill there, but you can see it's pretty small, 20 feet. With a 3-story townhome, it'll be towering over neighbors' homes on Whittingham. Beyond the buffer, I also want to address the overall scale of this development. With 75 housing units and 160,000 square feet of commercial space, it far exceeds what's typical in Marvin. By contrast, Marvin Gardens sits on 38 acres with 25 homes and 100,000 square feet of commercial space. Additionally, there is still no commercial plan or committed tenant, and no commercial tenants have been submitted in at least 10 years. I'm curious as to what we will be looking at after the residential is built and commercial remains empty. Are we going to have a mud pit on the side of the road for the next 5 to 7 years? I think we can all agree that would be awful and a stain on Marvin. We're not opposed to growth. We're in favor of responsible development, and that starts with respecting existing communities and upholding the ordinances meant to protect them. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service. Thanks.
Please, there's no clapping. If you are so moved and you want to do this clap, please feel free to do that.
All right, next up is
Don't make me kick you out for clapping.
Andrew Katz, 225 Tyndale Court.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Katz. I am also a resident of Somerset neighborhood. I live directly sort of adjacent to the property at the corner of Ray and Tom Short that was just addressed. I wanted to start by just saying that I'm not here to oppose growth. We understand this site's going to be developed. We know there have been multiple different ones sort of proposed in the past. But one of the things that's important to me is that with I guess it's the Township of Marvin, Village of Marvin, thank you, that it does abide by the standards of Marvin. This is a very beautiful area. It's a very nice place to live. We want to make sure that your standards are held throughout the development process. As was just mentioned, it is a 20-foot buffer between the edge of the existing properties that are there. The homes that have been proposed at 3 stories for the townhomes. So if we go 20 feet, it's a very narrow buffer, and then to have 3-story townhomes towering over our homes, that completely changes the dynamic of our neighborhood, the cuteness, and really just the overall feel that we're all used to and kind of have come to love. So again, while I don't necessarily have major concerns about the development itself, I do have a real concern about the fact that this is going to impact our day-to-day life even after it's completed. They're going to be packed right next to us and on top of us. In looking at previous proposals, I've seen, I believe, 60 feet being closer to the standard. I think in what was proposed in 2014, it was either 60 to 100 feet for their last proposal that went to Union County. So ultimately, what I'm just asking for you is to maintain the standard that you've consistently had. We have a lot of beautiful buildings and developments in this area. I'd love to see that continue. It's not just us that are going to have to live through us. We have a lot of neighbors that are concerned as well. We know the impact to traffic. We know the impact to the school district. I'd love to also see those studies as they do become available. But ultimately, I just want to make sure that we're not looking at a mud pit, that we're not ultimately going to be walking out my front door and staring at a 3-story home towering over me. A little bit of space, a little bit more natural green, I think it would go a long way to making sure that this is something that we could all enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Anand Sundar. Oh, and please state your address.
Yeah, sure. You want me to start until?
Yes, ready to go.
Okay, perfect. Good evening. My name is Anant Sundarajan, and I'm a resident of the Preserve at Marvin, and I reside in 4000 Flowering Beach Road. First and foremost, I want to thank Hunter and the planning staff for their willingness to engage, listen, and adapt through this process. And if I didn't mention that, we are talking for the ROMS project, I believe. And it is encouraging to see our resident feedback getting reflected in the meaningful updates to this Marvin Development Ordinance. I would like to reiterate several key points which has been, promulgated, which is that traffic impact analysis is now mandatory for all rezoning projects. Setbacks, which is going to be standardized across developments, specifically a 50-foot front setback and 25-foot rear buffer yard and a tree save area. And we appreciate the low impact lighting standards will be implemented to minimize the light pollution. And more importantly, the privacy aspect of it, the fence, which is going to be installed by ROMS at the higher elevation on the ROMS property with a tall, dense trees with at least 60% opacity should be preserved or planted. This is essential for our privacy, for our community, especially considering that 3 of those 4 proposed buildings, which is out there here, are going to be 2 stories. And we also were requesting for the sound levels, which is also being taken care of, which is to be limited at 65 decibels, particularly given ROM's plan to include a patio with open seating on the 4th building, which is very close to Dr. Naveed's property, which is on our side of the community. And I also wanted to ask, I expressed all this key things which has been promulgated, which is what our community is very appreciative. We also wanted to bring up a primary concern, which is the stormwater management. Despite being built by certified engineering reports, both the Preserve at Marvin and the Village of Marvin developments have noted the damage from the stormwater runoff. That raises a serious concerns for us. What additional measures will the Village of Marvin is going to take to ensure future developments to not result in the similar damages? We believe additional adjustments are necessary to continue fostering a common sense growth. We look forward to working with you all to ensure these improvements are meaningfully considered and implemented. Thank you all.
Next up is Naveed Jalali. Huh? I gave them all the pictures.
Okay.
We've got them.
Could you state your address, please?
Yes, sorry, I'm Naveed Jalali. I at 3001 Flowering Beach Road, right behind the Village of Marvin. So, good evening, and thank you, board members. So I've been resident in Marvin since 2019. Concerns that I have are not just hypothetical concerns. They're visible, measurable, and happening as we speak. I mean, not right now, but over the past couple of years and continuing to progress. As I've shared some pictures with you about the erosion that you can actually see even to the Village of Marvin Town Hall. Since construction of the Town Hall, flooding on and around my property has worsened significantly. The preserve's common open space was hit especially hard to the point that it had to be regraded just to handle the volume of stormwater runoff. I mean, this was not just a freak weather event or a natural disaster. It was a predictable consequence of development along with loss of, natural trees and impervious surfaces, expansion directly upstream from our neighborhood and my building. And there's the most important part. The project was fully approved. It met all Union County and Village of Marvin standards, but approval doesn't change the outcome. We are now dealing with real flooding downstream. In fact, the Village of Marvin experienced drainage issues and water storm issues on its own property and responded by commissioning the architectural and engineering firm McAdams to conduct a drainage study. This shows that even Village has recognized the need to better understand and address the stormwater impacts. Now, we're being asked to consider rezoning of a 2.9-acre parcel next to my house. And under current proposal, the property would discharge its stormwater directly into our preserve and in my backyard. While this may technically be allowed under existing stormwater regulations, it defies the common sense. How can we justify rezoning this property when we're already seeing drainage failures from past projects, and it's an ongoing issue that also met the standards that you had? If our current rules allow this kind of impact, then clearly the rules are not protecting residents or neighborhoods and integrity of our neighborhoods. Approving more developments without first addressing the underlying issues only guarantees one thing: more flooding, more damage, and more frustration for homeowners and neighborhoods. I respectfully urge this board to take a closer look, not just at what's allowed on paper, but also what's right in practice. We already have proof, and you are probably seeing that. Thank you.
Next up is Jen Thompson. You can see her, she's not here. Okay. Kristen Conway. Yes.
12017 Carolina Cherry Lane. You guys ready?
Good. Yep, you're good.
Okay, my name is Kristen Conway. I am the VP of the HOA at the Preserve at Marvin. I am not here speaking tonight for myself. I am actually speaking on behalf of our attorney, Steve Black, with Law Firm Carolina. He was unable to clear his schedule to be present. Therefore, he gave me a statement that he requested that I read. We are requesting that the approval should be denied tonight for the ROMS application or sent back for further review and study based on 3 key points. One was raised during prior meetings is connectivity and walkability via the Village Trail system and the connector trail to the Preserve at Marvin Trail. Steve, our attorney, has confirmed that there is no legal connectivity via the Preserve internal trail system to the Village Hall. This means that the Preserve internal trail will not be connected to any adjacent developments. The Village Hall will not connect to a larger system, ultimately making it a trail to nowhere. Our council has started discussions with Chaplain Spencer, the town's council, on this point. They will be discussing the removal and barricading of the unauthorized paths that currently exist. The planning board should not move forward with a decision on this plan until it speaks to Mr. Spencer to confirm the status of this important issue surrounding walkability. Furthermore, we understand that ROMS is planning on having the parcel they intend to connect to a sewer easement line located on our common area. While we do not deny that Union County has provided a sewer right-of-way, this installation and connection will require large tree removal equipment and excavators to work on the association's common area. However, our attorney is raising serious questions about whether a purported 210-inch temporary construction easement necessary for this installation even exists. These easements the easement, which was shown on a 2014 plat, are arguably void for lack of specificity and for vagueness based on the original grant of the temporary easements in their nature. Due to the more than a decade that has passed since the temporary easements were recorded, they have expired. They expired when the Toll Brothers project ended. The planning board should not move forward with a decision on this plan until it is determined that a sewer connection is legal or possible with all required easements necessary for development. Finally, the desired connection point for sewer is through a tree-safe buffer. We understand that a significant number of trees would have to be removed in this buffer for the installation of this sewer connection. It would seem clear that this violates the protections afforded for the tree-safe area under the MDOs. What good is a tree-safe buffer if it does not save trees? The planning board should not move forward with a decision on this plan until the scope of tree removal is shown by the owner and it is shown with how they can be in compliance with the MDO, saving the tree save and making it possible under the current plan presented. Again, this was from Steve Black with Law Firm Carolina. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that's all. No one else has signed up.
Great. All right, so we are moving on to, let's see, where are we? To the discussion of CZ-2025-2. Hunter?
All right, so this is in regard to the rezoning of the property there located at the corner of Tom Short and Ray Road. The board will not be taking any action tonight. The applicant is currently revising some stuff on their rezoning plans and will be resubmitted for you guys to review and consider at the next meeting. This includes stuff that we have kind of discussed in previous meetings regarding the buffer. They're working on showing a cross-section for you guys to show the grade elevation as well as from the townhomes to Somerset. Just so you guys, so the board has a better visual and understanding of the proposal as it relates to surrounding properties. The other thing to mention included in your packets, I know that at the last meeting, the discussion regarding the school impact study, in the findings, the applicant submitted that to Union County for, Union County's public schools for review/concurrence. Union County Public Schools basically did concur with the findings. I think it was the school impact study found an addition of 13 students. And I think Union County, the email came back and said that they predicted 15. So it's still, was very in line with Union County's modeling. So wanted to make sure that information was provided. Other than that, staff's working on their final review. Like I said, we've gotten comments back to the applicant regarding just some stuff in their development standards, as well as starting to discuss some preliminary kind of conditions regarding uses and building size, just making sure that some of that is identified in their development standards. All that will be presented at the next meeting. Is there any questions on the board or any additional information that the board would like to request from the applicant so they can prepare for the June meeting?
Yes. I am very interested in, and I know this was a Union County unincorporated standard, not a Marvin standard, but the 60-foot buffer, I'm interested in that. I personally do not think that a 20-foot buffer behind those townhomes is enough. And with the difference, I know they're looking for a cross-section, and I'm interested to see that, but with the difference in height and the short buffer, I do think that if they could increase that buffer, that would go a long way.
So this was discussed with the applicant, and that was one thing, if you recall, I think in the plans that are in your packet, the scale was off, because that was something that staff was recommending, that they increase the buffer to 30 feet. They don't have that. They do have the 20 feet, which is required per ordinance. What was discussed with them is looking at, once again, part of that cross-section is to include higher opaqueness and density increase, higher density of plantings to create a screening effect. The other thing too is, in these situations, the townhomes, you have to look at rear yard setback and then you have the buffer setback. So structure to structure is going to be far. Yes, you still have a 20-foot buffer, and I get it, property line and still the concern there. It was discussed with the applicant about installing a fence. Some of their concern on the either side of the 20-foot buffer, whichever way you look at it. However, there are a lot of properties in Somerset that have a fence, and so it's one of these things similar to the ROMS rezoning that we discussed last time, like having two fences in this area in between of maintaining and so on. So all that's been discussed with the applicant, and they are, like I said, are working on kind of a greater detail to kind of address those concerns that have been heard. But the 20-foot buffer is meeting ordinance requirement. Once again, yes, we can always recommend that it has to go higher. It is conditional
20
zoning.
is a minimum.
Correct. It is conditional zoning. Those items do have to be mutually agreed upon. But that's where, from my experience, like I said, there are other ways to increase the screening. And like I said, the intensity of the buffer instead of the width. It's not, everybody has different opinion, and I completely understand that. But that's, like I said, one objective that the applicant is working on for revising their submittal.
All right, well, are Marvinites, can we call that? What's the word? No. Okay, no, can't do that? Okay, well, so the people of Marvin have spoken, and they are not interested in townhomes, although townhomes would make, if they made sense in anywhere, they would make sense in this type of development. But if we're going to, and this is, I'm speaking for myself, if I were to approve, just me saying yes to this, I would say if we're going to approve townhomes in Marvin, I think they could go a little deeper on buffer. Even if it has to lose a couple of parking spaces, like whatever it has to do, we want to be good neighbors to our Somerset friends, and I just don't, 20's not enough.
I agree, 100%.
I agree with you.
Hunter, can I?
Yes.
So are you telling us that they're going to come back with a 30-foot buffer?
That was something that staff requested. They looked at that, like I said, the scale of those plans, because if you look at the hatchling in the current plans, it says 20 feet, but then it looks like there's more room. That scale was off, so they have the 20 feet, and that's roughly it. Now, that's specifically directly behind the townhomes. It does open up once you get, there's that common open space track or open space on the plans there at the end of, is it Tinton Hall? And then you get to the single family, and some of those buffers, the buffers still are the same, but then the setback differential from the single family homes are greater. So you still then have further building separation, because I know one thing to know is all the homes along the townhome row, all the homes in Somerset is rear of house to rear of townhome. There is an instance in the single family that is, because it's a cul-de-sac, it's a side setback. The minimum side setback in Somerset is 8 feet. I don't know exactly how far that house sits off the property line, but then you would have a side setback to a rear yard setback. So that's, side yard setbacks are typically going to be less than, is going to be your lower setback. Rear setbacks are typically going to be anywhere from 25 to 50 feet in single family residential. I would have to double check what Somerset is. And like I said, that's the minimum. That's, so it's hard to say without looking at a survey of all those homes of like actually how far the existing homes sit off the property line. But once again, that was kind of noted in stuff that we can, we've asked the applicant to at least, consider or look into some of the options. The hard thing is, I mean, this is like shortest way to put it is that.
Well, I guess my question really was, I mean, if they're bringing back 30, can they bring back 60 and show us what it does to the project?
I can request that from the applicant. Because like I said, it would basically take out.
I understand.
Yeah.
But, then we can take a look at it and say, well, here's what 30 does, here's what 60 does to the project, and we can look at it that way and, have an idea of, instead of just saying, 60 setback might not work, 30 works, let's see what happens when you do 60.
And when we're talking about single-family home to single-family home, it's, yes, is that 20-foot a no-cut buffer?
It's, so there is
Buffer.
existing trees along that. They have either started, completed, I'll let David maybe when we get there, the tree survey of the existing canopy trees per ordinance. So they would basically protect, preserve any of those canopy trees within that buffer. And then they would have to then plant in that buffer to meet the opaqueness. Like I said, the opaqueness per type, the buffer type is 60%. In Article 11 of the ordinance, it basically has what that minimum width is, kind of the density of plantings is the outline. So what we're looking at, or what staff is kind of, discussing with the applicant is looking, okay, if we can't go 20, can we get a denser, get some evergreens, get something that's a more visual screen where that opaqueness is higher, to still address some of the concerns of light and other things that were brought up without having to increase it. Once again, it's trying to still find a way to still mitigate the concerns to the best that we can, since this is, like I said, a conditional zoning aspect of it. But to your point,
Residential to residential, that transitional, there's really no transitional density there. So it looks like there's a decent amount of at least land between the back of the house, back of the property to the side setbacks. It's the townhouse area that is, I don't know, my main concern. Angel, I don't know Like, I don't know if that's specifically yours or if
Well,
everything is yours.
I mean,
but-
I walked it. I'm just gonna tell y'all, I walked it. Is it not on? Okay, sorry. I walked it, and it is right in their backyard. The setback begins right in their backyard. So I think that if they had initially had a 60-foot buffer, why, I mean, I understand our ordinance is 20, I get that, but
And the
I think
biggest,
there was a 60-foot buffer, though, so the
For com-
different,
County,
yeah,
right.
but it was also a
Commercial
60-foot
only.
buffer to commercial. So it is a slightly different, so it's, we're talking now instead of a single-family home residential
Mm-hmm.
right up against commercial, we're talking single-family home up against higher density residential.
and
So
it's right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right there. So, I mean, I understand their concerns. I do have a couple of questions, Hunter, which maybe you can ask them, or you may know, I don't know. How many stories will the single-family homes
single
be?
family?
Yeah.
It'd be similar product to the Heritage at Marvin. So building height would be 30 to 35 feet, so 2 to 3 stories. But it's basically their same product of what you see being currently constructed at the Heritage.
Okay. And are there any restrictions on the types of businesses, the commercial businesses that can go in there, like drive-throughs or?
So that is currently what we're working on with the applicant. They're, basically, they have already, in the current plans you see in the development standards, there's already, I think of roughly about 7 to 8 prohibited uses. Other stuff that I've discussed with the applicant is regarding additional restrictions on certain uses. They've already kind of put parameters on drive-throughs. They are permitted, but limiting to either 4 total or 2 for restaurant and then 2 for either pharmacy. But I want to say it reads 4 total. We do have a copy of the conditions and stuff that were agreed upon, part of the PUD that was approved through the county. And so some of those conditions are actually already carried over in their development standards, but that's other stuff that was discussed with the applicant on considering. The other thing that was, we're kind of getting that finer detail is the building size. So in their plan, they have 2 different kind of site plan proposals. And the intent of that is where, once again, it's locking them into a set amount of square footage, set amount of residential units, but then still gives them a little flexibility on building where the buildings are kind of at. They still have to meet setback requirements and so on when they go to construction, but it's kind of, flexibility in how they set up in the commercial. So one thing that was noted is that the maximum building size is that, because they have that one for the grocery store tenant, is 65,000 square feet, is regulating uses, if anything, if that is the site plan they choose. So meaning that it would be a less, how am I trying to say this? Uses will be more restricted for that building size, but then also putting a cap at where then, because the way it reads right now, you could put 2 65,000 square foot buildings there. There's no kind of guardrails there. So then putting a cap on the other building sizes to an extent, where then it kind of works with the math and works for their kind of marketing plan. And that's stuff that was, had a meeting with the applicant yesterday, and they are working on trying to, let's get these numbers, let's then get these updated in the development standards, and then that will be part of the recommended conditions as well.
Do they have plans for a gas station there?
So in the ordinance, gas station is allowed as part of, it's weird how it reads. It says service station with fuel pumps, and service station is kind of defined in a lot of different ways. So yes, now what was then discussed with the applicant is looking at regulating hours of operation if a gas station is to be constructed on the site, on top of regulating the amount of pumps. Once again, we haven't kind of set what that is, but they were open to definitely putting some of those restrictions in place.
Do we know, is Harris Teeter, because they're kind of involved, are they going to be the anchor? Are they going to be that 65,000 square foot, or do we know?
I can answer this, or David, do you want to speak on that if you want to come up, or you want me to just, so, you can come on up.
So I believe your question was, is Harris, I'm sorry.
Harris
Your-
Teeter.
Repeat the question for me.
Is Harris Teeter going to be the anchor tenant? Are they going to be the 65,000 square foot?
If there's a grocery store there, it will be Harris Teeter.
Okay.
we don't have a deal done with them yet. But if there's a deal to be done for a grocery store, it will be Harris Teeter.
Do you have any tenants at all lined up yet?
No, and the reason, it's kind of a catch-22. It's hard to get commitments from tenants if you can't tell them if you have zoning, and you can't tell them
Right.
what the size of the buildings are, you can't tell them what a site plan is. By the same token, if you go to the zoning and they want to know who the uses are and who the tenants are, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. So to be honest with you, what we've tried to do is address those adjacency issues and density and things that we can quantify: setbacks, buffers, driveways, architecture, height, those sorts of things, and percentage of open space, for instance, things like that, common areas, so that we can have some flexibility to design the buildings based on who the tenants are and where they need to be and get the layout. So, no, we don't have that. Some of it will be anchor tenant before we start construction, but not all of it. Some of it will be speculative. So what we have to do is design it based on what we think those anchors are going to be. And clearly, if you had a 65,000-foot grocery store anchor, it affects the entire layout of the whole center, which is why we tried to give you two different visions, one with and one without a traditional anchor tenant. I don't know if that answers your question adequately or not.
Do you have a vision of like what it's going to be? Like Blakeney's probably too big, but is there another development, a commercial development that's similar that what you guys are kind of hoping to achieve?
I can certainly give you other projects that are in the 150 to 160,000 square foot range. Phillips Place is probably in that range. The portion of Blakeney that is not what I call the anchor tenant component, not where Target and Home Goods and all those tenants are, but the area, the area closer to Ray Road and closer to Audrey Kell, that combined retail is probably in the 150 to 160,000 foot range on similar architecture. But I'd have to look at the details and just can come back and give you some comparisons just for thought process to give you some idea of, square footage as it relates to acreage. I can be glad to do that.
Yeah, Phillips Place is definitely.
The other comment I would like to make is several people have referenced 60 feet for buffers. The buffers in Union County are not 60 feet, they're 40 feet. There was a recommendation at one point in time from Union County to ask for 60, but what was approved was 40. And the reason it's 40 is because we were putting some very large big box tenants right behind those buildings instead of 12 acres of residential. So we were trying to address, it's not that we're just being arbitrary about saying 20 feet. We know what we can do in 20 feet. It can be an extremely effective, opaque, good-looking buffer. That buffer, by the way, is meaningful to both sides. It's meaningful to the townhomes, and it's meaningful to Somerset. It's not just something that's of advantage to one side or the other. So, although we're not doing the home part of it, Jones USA is, I know that their concern is having an adequate buffer between the two neighborhoods that also accommodates what they believe their purchasers of the homes are going to want to see. So this is why we're trying to put the cross-section. We've heard from Somerset. We know what their concerns are about the buffer, but I want to set the record straight. I don't believe that the existing zoning is 60 feet. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. But,
Thank you for the clarification.
I just want to make that clarification for you.
So it would be great if, so I know Jones Homes has worked with us before, and seeing a cross-section, it would also be interesting to be able to see what if you were to put, and I know this isn't necessarily, you'd have to be approved before you start doing, showing us plantings and all that type of thing, but it really would be nice to see what is the opacity. Like if I was on the back of a deck, in a townhome, what does it look like? Can I see Somerset? So those are the types of things that if and is it evergreen? Because,
Well, here's what I think we can do to help you with that. One, in addition to cross-sections, we can take some photographs or even be glad to have some people look at some of these other buffers that have been done I noticed several of them in Marvin itself as I was driving down the street where there's 20 to 25 feet that you can't see on the other side of it. So I think we can, in addition to giving you cross-sections, we can also take some photographs of other examples with similar sized buffers and landscaping and what they've grown into and what you can and can't see. Because, I mean, I think it's one thing, people may have different visualizations about whatever it is they're visualizing. And, you know, there's areas on our property where there's a lot of vegetation, and there's some areas where there's relatively none. There's some areas that had a lot of vegetation that homeowners actually have cleared, okay, on our property. So it takes the wide variety along that 2,000 feet of property line. There's some areas where I guess what I'm saying, it's not as easy as just putting one standard in for the whole thing. It may even actually need to be more adequate to say, this area may have this type of a cross-section, this area may have that type of a cross-section, where you can take advantage of existing vegetation and not lose it. And accept the fact that it's not all the same. You know, different grades, different
I think that's absolutely
topography.
appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to do a lot of plantings when there's already vegetation there, but it's the height
Yeah.
of, you know, it's the elevation change plus the height of the townhomes, you know, into backyards. So that's really where it's not just, you
I
know,
couldn't
seeing
agree.
through, it's also how do you protect, you know, going up. Like, you know, that's a pretty expensive tree if you have to get it to be a certain height, so.
So no, I think we can effectively do that along the entire property. There's, like I said, I don't think there's one answer for the entire buffer. I really don't. And it's just not that simple.
And I'm just really saying about the townhouse section, about the buffer. And I know that's a really tight area right there, and so, you know, I know we don't really have parking do we have parking? I know we don't have parking standards in the MDO, but are there parking standards
We do.
in the
We have
commercial
parking
area?
standards in, you're talking about there's not parking standards in the Heritage District, but there's still parking
That's-
standards
yeah,
in the
Heritage District.
MDO.
Okay, so there are parking standards.
Yeah,
in
there's a minimum requirement for residential, meaning like their driveway has to be at least X amount of feet, either wide or back, where that's typically for at least 2 cars to be parked in the driveway. And then the parking ratio for the commercial is outlined. They are proposing on both plans to meet that with just 1 per 350 square feet, or 1 for every 350, which, like I said, based off the uses and all that stuff, that's where it's kind of that average, because it's based off the highest uses and the vision that they have with how it's the minimum standards in the MDO for the mixed-use district. So,
Well, anything your folks can do to help us feel more comfortable for Somerset, on behalf of Somerset, would be great, and any visuals that they can also see, especially those homeowners that abut the backs of the townhouses, would be very helpful.
I understand. Thank you.
and yeah, and I'll add, with my meeting with David yesterday, kind of going through some of this, one thing that we did also discuss was open space. So the minimum requirement of open space is 7.5% of the total project area, which, when you look, and I'll show kind of their current proposal here, maybe not. There we go.
Say, did you break it?
Probably.
That's a lot of open space right there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Somerset, you're
Great
getting
buffer,
fireworks
yeah,
too,
that's a
wow.
great buffer.
I don't think we gave a permit for that.
So, looking at this, and once again, this is what is currently on the, like I said, they were making some minor revisions, but you see the green, and there shows open space, but obviously there's some aspects of that. So what I've asked them to do is then actually calculate the open space, because there is difference between dedicating something as open space and really what's usable, like in our ordinance, for example. Stormwater ponds can be counted towards the open space if they're not fenced in and they're somewhat a feature, but it only can count to 80% of the total. It's formulas. With all that being said, we looked at yesterday the buffers, which do count the open space that's being dedicated in the residential as well as the BMP, and they are above, I think it was roughly 10 or it was closer to 15 to 16%. With that being said, what was discussed is David is working on kind of some, once again, because this is subject to kind of change and kind of, this building may be here. I mean, like, it's still kind of conceptual in nature with, it's like these, where the buildings are proposed here aren't necessarily where they're going to be. Once again, setbacks and everything still have to comply. But kind of showing some open space amenity options, as well as kind of dedicating like X amount on the commercial side. And he's working through those numbers where then it's going to kind of be above and beyond the minimum requirement in the ordinance, and that would be kind of one of the conditions that would be added in. Once again, I don't necessarily know fully what that looks like. That was kind of the discussion yesterday, but that information will also be kind of updated for you guys at the next meeting.
Hunter, on this plan, it says 165,000 commercial.
Mm-hmm.
1 per 350 would be more like 577 parks, not 471.
That's a minimum, not the maximum.
No. If we're doing 1 per 350, it would be 577 parks. No? Am I doing the math wrong?
I don't know. I know that we've committed to a minimum of 1 per 350 square feet. If that won't get us to the 165, it depends on how much of the square footage is 2-story versus 1-story and things like that. So,
All right, I'm
No,
just
if you
looking at the
take,
plan.
if you take the 165 and divide it by 350, it's 471 spots,
Okay.
which I think is what's on their proposal. And once again, in the NVO, you have minimums and maximums for development, which, like retail, for example, has a minimum of 1 to 350 and a maximum of 1 in 200. So it's a range. But yeah, it's showing, basically what they are showing on this is that they are meeting the minimum requirement, but it's still subject to, obviously, they may have a little bit more, but they're not going to have less because that's an ordinance requirement.
And I guess it'll also depend on what buildings, if you have an anchor or a,
I mean, I think it's a certainty that the end-of-day exact configurations of the buildings and exact configuration and locations of the buildings and common areas and open spaces will be different slightly than what's on that plan. But the density won't change, the open space percentages won't change, it's simply the location of it in relationship to the type of building that we're building.
So maybe you could make the open space behind the townhomes.
I'm sorry?
Maybe you could make the open space behind the townhomes?
she's,
Well, that's not going to accomplish the goal for the for the retail area, but yeah,
she's just saying like,
I
you
know.
could take a little to, to
Yeah,
pad.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can just
That's
move within the footprint.
right, right.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
No, thank you. We look forward to seeing your,
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
your
Yeah, and if
graphics
you have any more,
pictures.
I mean, I know Hunter has my phone number. I'll be glad to talk to any of you off the, answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
So just to reiterate, that will be on the agenda next month. Staff report will be provided, and looking for a recommendation to be made by the planning board.
All right, great. All right, so now we will perform the function of the Design Review Board to review plans for the Whataburger project in Marvin Gardens out parcel 3. And I saw that they have changed their materials
Trying to get it pulled up.
they can't necessarily
guys
change their
pull it up?
signs, but they've
Trying.
changed their materials to better align with Marvin Gardens, so.
So while I'm trying to get this pulled up, once again, for some reason, my computer, when it's not on the docking station, just wants to like blow up. But as at the previous meeting, you guys were reviewed the first submittal for a proposed Whataburger at Marvin Gardens located on out parcel 3. Based off the discussion, comments, and feedback received, it was relayed to the applicant. They have revised their submittal. I also think somebody from the team is here if you guys want to come up. But in short, this is their revised proposal, open for discussion. I'm gonna get these
Yeah,
pulled up
it's-
here in
It's
one
much
sec.
more in line with the current buildings, so. I do have a question about, yeah, I mean, well, we have a, yeah, go ahead, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Sure, I'm Jason. I'm the new unit construction manager, so I'll be overseeing the project and the construction portion of it. And then,
I'm Alan Moser with BL Companies. I'm the civil engineer, and BL also is doing the architecture and the whole ASMEP for the project.
And now you have people more on your side now, so
Yeah.
you clearly showered today, thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Does anyone have questions for them about the materials and the new design? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it's a lot more.
I love Whataburger, I'm just gonna say. So good.
Clearly, yeah, yeah.
I do, I love Whataburger.
And that's my question. It's like, so I do have a question. I don't know if you listened to our recording, God bless you if you did, of our last meeting, but we have some questions about the entrance and exits for the drive-through line that is exiting into what is currently a kind of a one-way area for Dunkin' Donuts drive-through. There's just some potential traffic concerns there, so could you just walk us through how you see that traffic pattern flowing and?
All that up, or
I'm trying, yeah.
we'll give you a minute.
Yeah, it's literally,
Oh, you just can't get it?
it's,
Well, for the board, I think it's page 6.
you wanna try yours real quick? No, do the plans.
Oh, I'm on 6.
DRB plans.
Yes, but you need to look at it in relation to Dunkin' Donuts
Oh,
drive-through.
now it pulls up, what do you know?
That is the problem. And it's almost easier to see if you look at the.
So while
imperial.
we're getting here, I will mention that the village engineer has completed their initial review of the site, the development plans. Those comments were submitted back to the applicant, and will be incorporated once again, because we're kind of focused, we can talk like stuff with site design, but, because this is still, once again, I think a question or comment that we had from the staff level too.
You want to zoom in maybe just on the site itself? It might be a little easier to see.
And are you trying to say, Hunter, that as long as we're good with the design, like the overall aesthetics, we can approve or turn down and then?
I just want the board to be careful, like when it gets into, well, that, but also like the site element design for circulation and stuff, where that's more going to be kind of a requirement and
Control plus.
review from the staff level as well as the engineer. So that's all I'm trying to say, is basically like,
I think we're just curious.
yeah, and that's fine.
We can talk about it a little, sure, but if you can't get to zoom in much, that's fine too. It's not that.
And it's that,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
the
scroll up a
north.
little bit.
It's the.
Yeah, it's the north way. And we don't have much of the Dunkin' Donuts, and I hear you saying it's one direct, I'm trying to picture it. Unfortunately, this has been going on for us for about, I don't know, about a year and a half, so it's sat for a very long time, and we have some pictures. I haven't thought about the Dunkin' Donuts side much. Of course, we were envisioning most of the traffic to come in at the southern drive, coming in, of course, and going around the drive-through, looping back around the building and leaving the way they came in on the private road there, and not going through the Dunkin' Donuts side, because that's the easiest way to go. Which direction are they coming when they hit, if they came out and went right into Dunkin' Donuts?
That's, so right, basically where this connection's at, and then like, there's really no good way to fix it, is the start of the stacking for Duncan. Which, you know, one thing that we note at the staff level too is you have different hours of well, let me phrase that, not necessarily hours of operation, but peak hours between a coffee, and a Whataburger, which is mainly lunch and dinner. I don't I mean, do you guys have breakfast?
We have a pretty
Okay.
good breakfast.
What's on your breakfast menu? No.
So, you know, but still, that,
Angel wants to know. I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend.
that morning peak hour, yeah, could be a concern. I mean, one thing that we could maybe discuss is limiting that to maybe right out, I mean, where that's maybe just a single ingress or either exit, right out only. It just, I don't really know, when we looked at the design for Duncan, and they provide the adequate stacking requirements, but that then kind of, there's additional kind of, when you look at the design there, you have a little bit more room than what the minimum requirements are. I don't know if that's being an issue now. It's kind of one of these things that they've been operating for about a year now. The vacant out parcel 3 has been vacant, so I'm not really sure, but it is something that we kind of did note as a potential issue and something to kind of discuss.
I mean, traditionally too, just, I mean, what we find quite a bit, because we run into bailout lanes and, you know, cross-access and how the customer flows around the site, but traditionally what we find is most will come in on the southern entrance here, because that's where the stacking begins or ends. And as they leave, you know, we have pull-forward spots and things like that. Traditionally, they'll circle out around the building and go back out the quickest entrance back to the main road. The side entrance or this cross-access here typically is used by bailout, someone who comes in and quickly aborts, or, oh, I don't want to wait, and, you know, so they'll circle around, and instead of having to pull back all the way around, that's just ease of access or egress for customers who are bailing out. Traditionally, our site flow is 360 around the site.
So the top portion, is it going to be a one-way? And Hunter, or Austin, if you go back to that, so, which one?
If you want, we have
It's-
Google Earth pulled up.
Yeah, and
Shows us better what we're
Yeah.
looking at.
Yeah, I feel like almost Google Earth has updated.
See how they're
The
coming
photo.
out, see how they're driving, you're coming here, you're gonna come out up top, they're coming out the bottom. It looks like you guys are coming together.
No. That's wrong. No. That's the start. The drive board, you could have just went to
Yeah,
Google
so
Maps.
actually,
It's actually
if you go to,
the inverse,
if you
yeah.
go to Google Maps, you can actually now see the arrows. So I didn't realize that was the stacking lane when we looked at this the last time, because I couldn't see the arrows. I thought they were coming out of that, but they're actually going in. So
No.
it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah, no, so, can I see your mouse?
Yeah. So this is actually a lot better than, I don't think there's gonna be that
So
big of a
here is the, where you order. And so then they have roughly, I think it's like 3-car stacking after order.
Right.
But this is still kind of in theory, stacking. You do have enough width, once again, to kind of double lane. It's one of those things, once again, like egress, I mean, if you're entering the site, like the Whataburger site, I do agree that most people are not going to maybe enter from here.
Right.
Yeah, which, I mean, could be a thing, but,
Yeah.
but yeah, the exit for Dunkin's here, so it's not like you're putting 2 drive-through endpoints out at the same location.
I don't see this being anywhere near as bad as Waverly with McDonald's and Chick-fil-A.
Oh, God, yeah, yeah.
And Hunter, I don't want to misspeak, but if you go back to the plan, we're showing temporary construction easement where we're actually widening right there.
So
So
that-
we're actually
yeah.
widening that drive and eliminating one of the spots and then adding it on the,
Okay.
I
On
guess
the side.
that'd be planned right. So that drive actually gets a little wider.
Yeah, so is this just one lane?
It's 2.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
all
sir.
drive-through on the north side.
Yeah, the north side is just one-way drive-through traffic. Yes, sir. Yeah,
So you enter and exit from the same place?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, all of that on the right side and the north side of the plans here, once you get into that drive-through stacking, that is all one way. You can't.
And then if I want to park, I'm still going to go around to get to the park.
Correct, and/or obviously if you enter from the south side and make a left, your access to the entire parking lot, there's no angled parking, yes.
And to be clear, you guys have, it's a dual lane, right?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 2
And
full
what-
lanes and then a third bypass.
And I think I still use slight comments, but I think the ordinance requires where you have this striped as like, both lanes technically have to be a different material than your travel lane.
Oh, so essentially the second drive-through lane be concrete as well?
Yeah.
Is that one?
what the ordinance says, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, really?
Like,
okay.
But the travel lane through is fine, and I think, per our review, you met the requirements there. I said, from the actual site plan standpoint, during Pullman and I's initial, review compliance with the ordinance, there were really minor comments at that, and one was the drive lane. Other than that, is there any other questions, comments on the board on the site?
Yeah, no, now that we can see the arrows on Google Maps, it's actually not nearly as bad as we thought it was, so.
What's the construction timeline typically?
Bucket in the ground, we run about 22 weeks, 22, 24. It's a fairly pad-ready site, so.
Yeah. So,
What is the signage, so like with, in terms of signage, does signage happen after, like with construction documents?
so one thing that they, that was not provided last meeting, that is provided in your packets now, is the signage plan.
Must have missed that.
Let me get this up here, one sec. So in reviewing the signage, once again, we just kind of completed our review like today, so we'll have to kind of get some comments to you. They are providing 2 wall signs, a projection / wall sign here and here. That is missing menu board and any directional signage, which will need to be added, preferably a part of this. It's one of the, like, technically I know this, the ICD in Marvin Gardens language is kind of funky, and the process and approval process is kind of funky. It reads where technically, like, the signage is like this, are administrative approval, but DRB reviews and approves directional and menu board signage. And that will be one thing that will just, and it can be on the next meeting. We can still approve elevations, which gets your site construction potentially on its way. But we'll have to maybe get a revised signage to include menu board signage and any directional signage within the site.
What about, this looks lit? Is it backlit? Is it internally lit?
It's internal.
Internal.
I didn't think there was internal lighting in Marvin Gardens, really?
It's back, it's not allowed, back in halo lit.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
Back in halo lit are prohibited.
Even though all the examples show halo lit signs, backlit and halo lit signs are not allowed.
Once
But
again,
internally and externally illuminated signs, especially within their envelope, is allowed.
Okay. Thank you for the.
The other thing I will mention is they are proposing a ground-mounted or monument sign, which, that's that, but let me show you at the location here. Here along the adjacent right-of-way of Providence. This is where the Marvin Gardens ICD language is very vague and kind of confusing. In short, what it says, this is, all the out parcels are part of what is called Envelope B. It's kind of like the development node, and so they had development standards for that specific envelope. Envelope B is only permitted 2 wall-mounted signs and 1 projection sign. It doesn't say that it's permitted a monument sign. The tricky part about it is, it doesn't say it's not. I mean, like, it's kind of vague on how it reads, because there's monument sign requirements there. One thing that we kind of discussed at a staff level is, in the new MDO, there's a whole master sign plan that goes through basically this same process, which would allow them to have a ground mount, the monument sign. And I need to talk with the attorney and on those provisions and how that kind of compares with an ICD. But the way the language reads for the master signage plan in Article 17 is basically if it's a part of any other corridor plan or small area plan that has design guidelines, which even though these are development, like the development standards for the district are like the zoning standards, it could also be interpreted, those are the design guidelines. So it's one of these things, like the 2 options to have that monument sign is one, either a text amendment to the ICD language or we take this as a master sign plan, which I'm hoping our attorney's in agreeance with my interpretation there, where then it all would still get approved. It would be the same process. And this was similar to what happened with 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven has those two similar in size monument signs, but they're identified as directional signage.
Yeah. That was kind of the thought, was.
Yeah.
We saw that they were their own parcel, they had a couple of.
Because 7-Eleven has, let's see if I can get this pulled up.
They're in a weird spot too, though. I mean, at least the parcel that you guys would be building on is right on the road front, and so you'd get a lot of
course.
eyeballs.
Nope, it's not. But on, I know it's hard to see. This is a 7-Eleven site, everybody. They have directional signage here and at their other access right here that are basically the same design as the Whataburger, like it's on a monument kind of platform, stone base, has the 7 kind of showing, once again, that's kind of their entrance egress. And that's where interpretation kind of comes into this. And so the DRB cannot approve additional signage that's not permitted, but it also can be open for interpretation there on direct, because then it could be classified as directional signage. Just saying. It's,
Okay, so you're saying that, okay, so they've got 2 monument signs that are allowed, so that would be the
two wall signs.
wall signs.
So A1 and
Sorry, not
A2.
monument, 2 wall signs. So that would be the Whataburger name plus the W, the kind of retro W.
That one is more, it's another kind of funky way the ordinance reads, is treating that as more of a projection sign / wall. Like I said, the ICD signage language is all over the place. Like, it has very good design criteria, but the actual regulations on permitted sign, sign area, all that stuff is vague and not consistent. The part of that issue is that when that development was approved, they knew it was going to be a Publix. If you go look at the back of that ICD language, Publix has a master signage plan, but it doesn't really set up the out parcels for adequate signage. This came up with Dunkin' Donuts. They have 2 wall-mounted signs, one over their entrance and then one on one side of where their drive-throughs at. But there's not one on the back side, and that's because the way the ordinance reads, they're only allowed 2 wall signs. That's a text amendment that has been discussed with Duncan, and once again, this one, the signage that they are proposing on the building complies outside of sign A, which is the Whataburger sign, is slightly over the square feet, because it's 34, the maximum is 32.
Okay.
So that one will just have to be reduced one, from my understanding, you guys have different kind of sign, size, so.
But the primary and the secondary signs that are on the building are not monument signs.
Correct.
That's identification.
Sorry, say that again?
So if you have Big Whataburger on the side of the building, that is not considered a monument sign.
No, that's one of their permitted wall signs.
So with the DRB, we can allow for 2 monument signs. It was my understanding in the new MDO.
Well, not in the MDO. In their ICD, what it says for monument signs is that the DRB can approve monument signage that does not comply with the design standards for monument signs, but it cannot permit a monument sign where it's not allowed already. But it's not really clear where they're allowed when you read it. That's what, like I said, it's.
So they have, we'll share Mike. So they basically, they can get eyeballs from the road, but if you are internally in the development, I mean, unless you know what the Whataburger, I mean, you know what I mean? There's no way to see, that's the Whataburger, unless
Yeah.
you just know where it is, like Angel's gonna know.
So, like I said, from a monument sign standpoint, what they're proposing is very kind of low impact. It's off the ground, it's 6 feet high. It's kind of standard with the new traditional way of how you see monument signs along highways. And so, as mentioned, like,
Where's that one?
This one is located between the so right here. So here's Providence.
So, okay. This is just from, you've already got two signs. You've got one sign on the, I don't know what side that road is, but you've got two basically outward-facing signs that are going to be seen via Providence Road.
You have one.
Monument sign,
Oh,
I mean, does the monument sign make sense to go there? Or like, would you more want it internally facing so that there's a sign inside the development so
So-
that people know where to go?
I'm curious about this.
what do you mean?
So where it's shown here is,
It's the 6-foot sign.
It's a 6-foot sign and it's 4 feet below the road, actually.
correct.
unfortunately.
I'm curious.
Should that be, if
like you
that's
just made
here,
note, would it be, I don't know how the code reads, so this is just a question, but almost down here where the curb cut is or along that, where you have some sort of identification from inside,
yes, that,
inside. the,
that would work as directional signage.
That would, okay.
Yes. And that wouldn't require a text amendment, anything. That would, we just need to revise the plans to be compliant and show that, and we'd be fine.
And that would be something that, would that have to come back to this committee, or could that?
Technically, yeah. Because, yeah,
It'd be pretty quick, though.
yeah. This,
John-
7-Eleven had to do the same thing 4 years ago. They got their elevations and site plan approved, and they had to come back to the next meeting and do their signage. So it wouldn't, in theory, it wouldn't hold you guys up from permitting to get land construction started for the building. It would then, we would just get it revised, make sure it complies, where then it comes back to their June meeting. They would just make a motion to approve. It goes to council on their consent agenda to affirm that decision. So then I could issue sign permits July 9th, because that council meeting's July 8th.
And John has a question. John, do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, I was comment regarding, monument sign. It's not specifically allowed in the, the documents with Marvin Gardens. If we allow one, does it open us up to a whole lot of, everybody comes back and says, I want a sign because they got a sign, and all of a sudden we got an awful lot of monument signs.
And no, John, and we agree. That's what we were kind of discussing, is potentially looking at, it looks like it makes more sense for it to be somewhere on the private road, kind of showing with the interior, or even here, which would then, in my opinion, be treated as directional signage and wouldn't, which would be the same as the 7-Eleven at both of their entrance points. I can't.
How does this, if they choose to move that location, what about square footage? How does that compare?
For,
7-Eleven.
I would have to double check with the language, but I'm pretty sure, I mean, it's in the same nature as the 7-Eleven, so it should be fine.
You recall 7-Eleven, so I'm, taking your word at it.
Yeah, and if my computer worked, I'd pull up 7-Elevens, but it's not, so. But either way, if they move that, then staff will review it from compliance, and then it can still be, like I said, the signage portion will come back, because they still have to add the menu board signage technically. Like I said, the way that language reads is that you, as the DRB board, technically review and approve the elevations, and when it comes to signage, the design and location of directional and menu board signing, not like the signs on the building, because they're already permitted per the ordinance.
You would need to look at, so right now, your monument sign is at 6 feet. The so the directional signs, the max height is 5 feet, so you just have to probably make just.
But that doesn't include the base. That's what they're so.
That's with the base.
Does that say with the, I'm not looking at the ordinance, but they're showing the sign itself is actually 5 feet high, but it's on a 1-foot base.
Okay,
So that's what it is. We've got 10
okay, all right, so it already complies then.
Sorry, 10 inches, yeah.
Okay, cool.
What are you thinking about?
That might make it a little easier.
Yeah. So I can,
So can we make a motion to approve
building elevations?
the building elevations?
Yep, and then so I believe the motion probably does have sign included in the motion.
Both in there, contingent upon engineer review.
Um,
Can change that as we need to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could just say, I'll make a motion to approve the design elevations for the Marvin Gardens out parcel 3 contingent upon engineer review and signage plans to be approved at a later date.
You can just leave signage plans out and just leave it there for now.
All right, so,
They're on separate entity. The signs are separate from the elevations and the site, right?
Yes.
yeah, we can just
So-
pull them out.
So, okay, just to approve the design elevations contingent upon attorney review. Got it.
And then can I ask one last question?
No.
So the signage, correct me if I'm wrong, Hunter, is it building wall-mounted signs, directional signs, and then menu board art? Those are all the 3 separate signage approvals? And a follow-up, I guess, would be for the menu board. If it's all digital menu board, is that still something you guys want to see to be approved? It's not.
I'll have to double check the digital, because obviously when these were written, it was still kind of in the things were changing type phase. But I know this came up with Duncan. I just can't remember. I'll have to go back and recall. So, but to answer your question on the approval thing, look at it from a signage package. They're not approving every single sign. They're just would be approving the signage plan. And then I would then issue the permits, because you guys have submitted the zoning permit already for the 3 signs per this plan. So basically, I already have those like sign filled out type thing. It's just, all I have to do is go put DRB approved at their so-and-so date meeting, and then can issue it. So yeah, the signage can come back at the June meeting. Like I said, council has to affirm it per the process, which would be their July 8th meeting. So literally the morning of July 9th, I could issue the permits for the signs.
And is signage permits, is that tied to building permit?
Not for your site design, no.
Okay, but it is for the building itself, the elevation? I think
You-
mentioned you could start essentially from the land disturbance. permit.
No, you could still get a zoning permit for the building. The county will still have to issue any type of electrical permitting and stuff for the signs to be installed.
Yeah.
But that can be a separate permit, so it won't hold up the start of construction for the building and the site.
Yeah, because like you mentioned, the Dunkin' menu board, that's like a stationary menu board, whereas ours is digital virtual. So if we need to submit some,
I'll follow up with you in the morning. I'll double check. But we definitely need to get that location of the directional signage moved.
Madam Chair, you still have a motion on the table.
Yeah, why don't we deal with this one?
There's no seconds.
We don't even
You have a
need to-
motion on
we
the
don't
table, it
need
needs
a
to be
second or
voted
third.
on.
All in favor? All right,
You
so
need
moved.
John's vote.
Oh, John. Thank you, John.
I'll shoot you guys an email in the morning, just kind of recapping this.
Okay.
So,
so
Thank
that
you.
was elevations and,
elevations in the
Elevations approved.
engineering plans,
From
yes.
us.
all right.
So,
Thank you all.
thank you.
Angel would like you to bring samples next time.
Next time, bring samples.
I don't know if that's a kickback. I don't know if that's against the law.
Can we get like donut cut in half with burger? And coffee.
All right, moving on to discussion and recommendation of CZ 2025-1. This is our rezoning application. What updates do we have from the last time this was presented?
So they, staff's completed their report, and I can go through that. Once again, computer, lovely. So give me one sec. Skylar, do you want to present first, or you want me to go through my report? What do you guys prefer? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go through my staff report, and they have a presentation that's included in your guys' packets that then we can, I'm going to let them go through, because they have a little bit greater detail on a few items that's been discussed.
And just for the audience, the planning board cannot put off this vote legally. So just to address a comment earlier, like this has to come to a vote tonight, so.
So, as mentioned, the property located at 118 Marvin School Road has submitted a rezoning petition to rezone the property from rural residential to Marvin Heritage District commercial only. The rezoning request is to develop the site for commercial mixed-use development and include light commercial uses such as retail, restaurant, and professional office as permitted in the M8 for the Heritage District outlined in Table 8.1 of the Marvin Development Ordinance. The surrounding properties consist of, to the north, you have existing land use of residential/common open space, which is the preserve at Marvin. Property is zoned SFR2. To the south, the property is Village Hall here, which is the zoning designation and land use is civic. To the east, you have the gates at Ansley, which is zoned Union County R40. And then to the west as well, you have the preserve at Marvin, which is residential/common open space. The site currently consists of 2.94 acres with an existing single-family home and detached accessory structure. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing structures on the property and construct 4 new commercial buildings totaling 30,000 square feet, which is a reduction from their original submittal of 35,000. That includes the applicant agreeing to the condition of building number 4 being 1 story in height. So the max cap on the square foot or commercial square footage would be 30,000. The proposed development will be phased, with building 1 and 2 being constructed during phase 1 and building 3 and 4 being built during phase 2, with a vesting period being proposed of not to exceed 7 years. The permitted uses, as kind of mentioned, is proposing to do specialty commercial and retail space offering goods and services such as ice cream, coffee, specialty foods, wines, gifts, boutique art, gallery on the first floor with office type proposed on the second floor. The applicant has done also kind of a market study. I can let him hit on that during their presentation regarding that on the kind of proposed vision and potential tenants there. Architectural uniform and consistency with the master plan. The proposed development shall be consistent with the design themes that's outlined in the MDO for the Heritage District. The proposal has originally submitted, has been revised, once again, from the comments and feedback received during the neighborhood meeting to currently what's proposed in the packets. Tree preservation, there's approximately 26 trees on the existing site. The tree preservation and mitigation plan is required to be included with the preliminary plat and construction document phase if the rezoning is approved. The applicant has prepared a tree survey of all trees over 12 inches in diameter that would be required for mitigation if they are removed. And that's once again all outlined on the plan. The site also includes a tree conservation area to preserve the existing trees along the perimeter. Additional trees will be required to be planted along the perimeter to comply with buffer requirements. The buffer of the site, the minimum is a 20-foot vegetative buffer on the rear and side property line, which is the type C buffer per Article 11 of the MDO. The staff recommends to the applicant to increase that buffer to 25 feet, and the applicant agreed to that condition. So the buffer on the rear has been increased to 25 feet. The staff also recommended, in conjunction with approval from the Preserve HOA, there's an existing wood fence that's located in their common open space, for that fence to be removed, and then the applicant to install a new screening fence at the back of their property line for better screening. And then the maintenance of the obligations of the buffer and fence would be part of the maintenance agreement, which will be part of the next phase if the rezoning is approved. The proposed plan has, regarding open space, has 9.5% of tree preservation and buffers, and approximately 20% of dedicated open space amenities of the proposed development, which is totaling the 30% of the ordinance requirement. Regarding greenway and trail dedication, the applicant's proposing the 8-foot asphalt sidewalk along the property's Marvin School Road frontage and location kind of shown on the site plan. The applicant can construct this portion in accordance with the Marvin Loop project, or upon election, the developer may make a payment to the village for a fee in lieu of their portion in compliance with the NCDOT approved plans for the Marvin Loop project. Parking, these numbers might be slightly off. The proposed development has a total of 98 parking spots, including 4 ADA accessible parking spots and 3 PV. which is now approximately 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is an increase from what was originally submitted due to reduction in the square footage of the building, and then as well as increased parking being proposed as part of their connection with the Village Hall site. Vehicle access and transportation. Access to the site will be from Marvin School Road. The applicant's proposing a cross-access connection to Village Hall for internal vehicular connection, and the placement and configuration of the vehicular access point are subject to any minor modifications required to accommodate final site design and construction plans and to any adjustments required by approval by NCDOT and the village in accordance with the applicable standards in the MDO as well as our engineer design manual. Water and sewer. The development will utilize Union County water and sewer. Water is accessible along the front of the property along Marvin School Road. There is an existing sanitary sewer easement from the preserved neighborhood. As mentioned kind of in the public comment, once again, whatever legal, we are not the permitting agency for water and sewer. That would be the county. I did reach out to the county regarding the location of the easement and the temporary construction easement. I have that email, and the county confirmed that the 20-foot easement is there. They also confirmed that the temporary construction easement is still valid because it's for future extension of the sewer. Once again, for anybody, like that's the county's jurisdiction. It's their easement, their temporary construction easement. So that would have to, any comments, concerns would have to be directed to them regarding that. Stormwater, the site plan also includes an underground stormwater retention system. Per Article 19 of the MDO, all developments disturbing over an acre or more of land and having a net increase in pervious built upon area exceeding 24% of the total development shall provide stormwater detention to control peak runoff from the 2, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm and 24-hour. This will be reviewed for compliance, a part of the site development and construction plan phase, and require, once again, review and approval from NCDEQ. Regarding lighting, the applicant will submit or shall submit a lighting plan consistent with the ordinance requirements, which would include a photometric plan. Once again, that would be a part of their construction documents if approved. Outside other agency notes, once again, kind of already mentioned the comments there regarding from Union County Water. The other comments is from NCDOT. They have reviewed the TIA, which is included in your packets. The applicant has revised their plans to incorporate those driveway improvements into their proposal. And so that was kind of, DOT was satisfied with their proposed kind of intersection or road improvements. Last thing is that the applicant is still drafting the development agreement, which is required per the rezoning. That will be on your guys' June agenda. Once again, those development agreements are basically the legal binding document for the rezonings, and includes kind of some other like maintenance and other improvement type standards. So that will be on your guys' agenda in June for review and recommendation as well. Before I kind of get into the other stuff, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Chris Duggan. I'm the attorney for Rob's Investments.
I'm Ravi Basretti. I'm the property owner.
And I'm Skylar. I'm with DPR. I'm the civil engineer.
Skylar with no last name. Just Skylar.
It's DeMatteis, in case anyone's curious how to pronounce it. It's very long.
All right. Does anyone, so I will say this. So our job as the planning board is we are not approving sewer easements, any of that. All of that is not in our scope. We are just looking at the rezoning. Does it match up with the land use plan and the small plan map for the Heritage District? Any questions? Any concerns?
I have one question.
Sure.
If the tank for the stormwater is full, where does the overflow go?
You want to explain that?
So there's going to be an overflow weir that kicks into the downstream side in the event of like a hurricane, I guess should say. In the event that it's clogged, it's going to bubble back up into the property out of the storm drain grates that are in the.
She's talking about entry points. We got two entry points. One is in the northwest corner of the property behind Dr. Naveed's home, and one is right on Marvin School Road. So there are two entry points that the water would be spilling out of the stormwater.
So, in our meeting, we met with Ravi, his team, and the homeowners association a week or two ago, and Skylar went into pretty detailed about how the stormwater, it is an enormous, like it will hold a lot. It's actually will hold way more than necessary. And if something were to happen, like if the filter were to get clogged or anything like that, and something was going wrong, it would actually bubble up through the parking lot. So that's how they would know that there is an issue. But filling up what's the likelihood of it filling up? Can you give that?
What's the likelihood of it?
Likelihood of it filling up,
Yeah.
like completely being
Completely full. Yeah, so we're required to have a foot of freeboard over the 100-year storm. So I guess I don't know how to say this, like hurricanes are more on the level of 100 to 500-year level of storm event. So if you think about a heavy rain event like that, plus you have a foot of freeboard, meaning your water surface level is a foot lower than any overflow points. So that's what I mean when I say, like, if it's clogged, it's going to go back up through the parking lot. The likelihood, obviously, we're seeing heavier, more intense rain events, so I can't really speak to when those happen, but there are measures in place to get the water out of there to not create flooding on the site. But again, it's a 100-year storm, which is more than most jurisdictions require. The state requires to the 10-year storm. So had this not been in Marvin, it would have been a much smaller system, but obviously you guys' regulations are to the 100-year storm, so that's the size. Does that answer? Okay.
And to clarify on the bill, like I said, the village does go to the 100-year storm, which is a more significant event. There's actually two more, when they do their hydroanalysis and provide the documentation as part of their engineered plans, there are additional storm modeling that they have to do up to the 100. So you have the 100, 50, and 25 that are three different, once again, type events, obviously 100 being the largest, but their stormwater infrastructure is built to withstand and retain and manage the water up to the 100-year storm on the site. So it would obviously be better than what the current condition is of how, because nothing is there, but at the same time, there is still an issue. On top of, in their model, or in the, their drainage basin, they have to take into consideration any property or acreage already flowing to the site. So that also goes into the calculations for their numbers. So all that would be part of the engineered plans that's reviewed by us. And once again, they would get then comments and approval from the village, but then comments and approval from the DEQ before any type of construction would be permitted.
The other thing that I'd like to bring up is, and Ravi has agreed to this, and I hope the Preserve It HOA is still considering to agree to this, and this would be written into the development agreement, which is binding, is that the applicant, the village, and the HOA will continue talks about how to improve stormwater, because it's not just these sites, it's also coming from other locations further up. And so it's going to have to be a group effort in order for Mr. Naveed's house not to float away. We're going to try to work, I think everyone needs to come together to really solve the problem.
And for clarification there, so when the preserve was built, I can pull up the plans, I don't have them with me, but once again, that pre-drainage acreage that I was mentioning, the preserve took into consideration all the properties that were referenced, ours, the applicants, as well as the Marvin Grove. However, all then three of those sites are in the process and going to be constructing their own stormwater measures. Therefore, that it will be, once again, all the water flowing on the Village Hall site will then be retained. It's 100-year storm and dispersed. What our ordinance basically states is that they are not they're not able to increase the amount of water that's flowing off the site to adjacent properties that is a higher rate than the pre-development number. So that's how all that's calculated. So even like when the skimmer, like when the water is being discharged, it would be at the same, if not less, than what the current flow pattern is with no development. So you won't see an increase. But like I said, the other part of that is you have additional development happening around or upfits that will be doing those same stormwater control measures to retain the water on the site. So you would see a better catch upstream and then release downstream at slower amounts.
And I know that in our last conversation, and I don't know if this still stands, but at the time, you were agreeing to, in one of the points coming off of, I think it's the point closest.
The question that you asked, I think that's the screen that we'll all be looking at. You see the
No,
down
so,
below?
yeah, so mine is this one. Yeah, so this one here, so that goes towards, that it releases and then flows towards Mr. Naveed's house. So you had mentioned, and Skylar, you had also come up with this, you and Hunter were kind of in each other's brains that night, but talking about taking that underground, if the preserve HOA would allow an easement for that to be drained into the stormwater so that it never even goes onto the surface. It is feeding directly in underground, which would actually I would imagine improve the situation at your house because you wouldn't even have it.
You wouldn't have an
released
outfall.
on the surface, so.
You could even use some French drains behind Dr. Naveed's home, so you could tap those French drains into that same channel that actually connects to the stormwater pond. That was a suggestion that Skylar came up with.
Yeah, and these are all going to be issues that, as Chair Cates has discussed, that we're going to be talking about and trying to work together with the preserve, with the village to come up with additional solutions to provide some relief to that property and improve the drainage from what it is even now.
And not all on Ravi's shoulders, but coming together, so the preserve, Ravi, the village, all comes and joins in to try and fix the storm, because it is definitely, yes, there's been development, but the storm, the 100-year, I mean, I swear last week, I felt like we had like 200-year storms like back-to-back in Mecklenburg County, so it's gotten crazier, and it really has, it just is what, the weather's gotten worse, so.
And Scott, you can once again kind of maybe speak on this more, is when we have those more significant events, it changes the average. So when they're doing their design, it's based off of, like the 100-year storm 10 years ago wasn't the same as what you were, like you said, kind of experiencing now. So the numbers are always changing based off the weather pattern. So yes, it's designed into that time, but that's where that 100-year storm kind of comes into play compared to DEQ's minimum, is that we're already kind of building for higher amounts of water as part in our ordinance, to go ahead and do that planning to mitigate future stormwater being an issue.
And as part of that development plan as well, there will be requirements for the maintenance of the system, right? So, you're not just going to sit there and wait until everything starts bubbling up. There'll be ongoing maintenance as part of the development agreements.
The French drains that you mentioned, is that on the buildings themselves? Where?
We're talking about the neighbor's property.
So
Because
on-
to help them with the water issues, have some French drains to push the water away into that channel that we're going to build, connects to the stormwater.
And then proactively, when the land is graded, can it also be sloped so it's not towards the preserve, or towards, it would be away towards, I guess, the southeast corner of where the other
Yeah.
stormwater?
So basically, the only grade that's going to go back towards the preserves is anything from the back of curb back, which is just going to be your like wooded, vegetated buffer. Everything in the parking lot shoots back in and goes into the underground detention system.
But there are, I mean, there's a decent amount of water coming through, and there is a small slope, so naturally, water is by gravity draining onto Dr. Naveed's property, so.
Which we'd be intercepting basically by taking it through here, and
You'd be intercepting some of it would
Yes.
still continue to flow that way. Because
Correct.
that's just the way water's gonna flow, so, but,
Do you know that you can put a retention pond in do you know it will go there?
in terms of like the depth, or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can put it underground.
Yes.
That's possible?
Yes. And so we don't have soil studies done yet. Obviously, that is something that happens during construction review. But at that point, they would advise things on the soil, like is the soil too wet to put something over top of it? If that's the case, they put a liner in, like similar to a pool liner. So there are different kind of scenarios that you can work through if something would come up that would prevent it. But depth-wise, yes, we have enough. So that footprint is based on a 66-inch height of units. So those little like square box things.
It's a cool system. And it is by law, and this is for everyone, by law, the drainage on the property at the end of construction must be at pre-construction drainage. So however the site drains now, it can only be improved. So
To even,
that is something that like, we're not looking at, that is, what do you call them? You have some DEQ and,
well, the village is still reviewing, because like I said, our ordinance goes above DEQ, but also during development. I mean, there's sedimentation erosion control measures that, once again, part of their site development plans would have, and they, once again, have to ensure that erosion and sediment are not flowing off the site. Same thing with controlling, so that's where in like some developments, you'll see these temporary stormwater basins where sometimes they get converted into a full post-construction, sometimes in some subdivisions, fill gets brought in on top of it and build a home. Like, but what they're doing is they're retaining during that construction, because you are obviously working the earth, potentially removing certain vegetation and stuff that they still have to retain during the development phase itself.
have any other questions? Ken, any questions? John, any questions online?
No. Compared to the original submittal, this is far and above, improvement.
One more thing, Robbie. I know I've been asking a lot of questions about parking. You're going to do all 98 parks on the first, okay? So we'll have a.
That's what it's going to
Yeah.
be.
So we'll have a 15,000 square foot building with 98 parks, right?
98, yes.
And then you'll see how it
We'll
goes.
see how it goes, yeah.
All that has to be constructed prior to the,
But when you're done, you'll have about a 3 to 1,000. Not 3.5. You'll have
3.5, yeah.
Six.
3.5.
You'll have 3
3.5.
parks.
Per thousand square feet,
Not
yes.
3.5.
No, I think it's
It's
3.5.
3.5. It's because they dropped down to 30, and I mean, if you,
It was 3.
35,000.
they're at 30,000.
Now we're at 30,000.
30. There we
Yeah.
go. It was, I was,
That's like I squeaked that half out.
all right, perfect.
We're not pulling a fast one.
No, I thought I saw 35, I'm sorry.
His math
Good.
has also been off tonight.
Yeah, all week, not just tonight.
Is there any other questions for the applicant or anything else you guys want to add?
no, I just think that Robbie has come a long way from that initial submission, has taken the comments of the neighbors to heart, has provided a lot of concessions to that as far as the design of the buildings go, the reduction in building number 4 down to 1 story, and just the look of the parcel as well. Going to be putting in, per the DOT, that left-hand turn as well as a decel lane for the right end. So there's going to be a lot of improvements on the access as well.
One more thing, sorry.
Yes, sir.
If we approve and he gets into planning stages and he said, this underground water system is just gonna be too expensive, does he still have to do, or can he come back and say, it's just too expensive? Are we
So,
approving that he has to do this, or are we just approving the rezoning?
no, I mean, basically you're approving that he has to do this, because
Okay.
the conditional zoning is a site-specific plan. So if it were,
He can't get a building permit unless he does.
correct.
That's-
So, yeah.
That's,
Or he'd have to just come back and resubmit.
He would have to, basically, yeah, if the underground system were somehow not going to be compliant and function, the only other option would be to then do an above-ground stormwater pond, which would then completely change the site, which would have to basically go through the site, or the conditional zoning amendment process, which is the same process you see here. So, yeah.
question is, do we have any other conditions that we have for Ravi at this point?
I mean,
We've addressed them.
and my conditions are really already in the development agreement, and that's just to keep open channels with the HOA and Marvin to help fix the stormwater issues. You can't fix nature, but I would really like for the HOA to also work with you guys. So far, we've had great open discussion. I'd like to see it continue because it is a problem for everyone. It's not a Ravi problem. It's not an HOA preserve problem. It's not a Marvin problem. It's all of our problems. So I'd really like for there to be some collaboration to continue going on to see these properties improved.
We will do.
So, with that being said,
My best teacher voice.
so what?
I give you my best teacher voice, my stern teacher voice. All right, so we have three of votes that could be, 3 motions that could be made to approve the conditional rezoning submission as proposed, to recommend approval of the conditional with additional conditions, which it doesn't sound like we have any, unless you guys have some that we need to address.
Just a reminder, it is the recommendation, it's best practice that all motions be made in the affirmative.
Yep.
And then if you want to vote something down, you just vote no. That way,
Right.
we're always clear what's a yes and what's a no.
Right.
And that's
then
all.
we have a, to recommend to not approve.
But,
Is that a
yeah.
double negative?
So if you want to do it as is, you vote yes for
Yes,
one,
down, yeah,
no
so
for 2 and 3.
you just need to remove that last
Correct.
one.
If you have conditions, do number
Right, but if you have no conditions,
Do
you
number
vote yes for
Yep.
1, no for 2 and 3.
No, you're only doing one. These are just the
Okay.
options of the
Okay, I'm
motion.
gonna,
And I'll state the recommendation, and then you just either vote yes or no. And I'm just gonna make the statement, okay. So do you have any other conditions that we need to state in this legally?
so I messed up on the motion. I didn't put the conditions in, so they are in my staff report, at the staff recommendation, which the applicant's already kind of complied with some of these, as in like the increase of 25-foot buffer. It's still good just to have it in here because it still will get tied to their site plan. I can read them,
Or could we do, since it's
Yeah.
part of record, can we just do, to recommend approval of the conditional rezoning submission with additional conditions stated in the planners?
I would recommend reading them out loud. They really need to be in the motion.
Okay. All right. Y'all just making me earn my money today. I know. Pats on the back. Earn my pats on the back, yeah. Earn those threats, yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's what I said, it's yours.
I didn't know, I didn't need some like gargling or something. All right.
One's gonna be.
Everybody ready? Put your big boy pants on. Here we go. All right, so the motion that will be for voting is to recommend approval of the conditional rezoning submission with the following additional conditions. Rezoning plan exhibits and attachments. All exhibits and attachments as submitted by the applicant shall be incorporated as part of the rezoning. Compliance with all terms and conditions of the included development agreement. All NCDOT and village traffic engineering comments and recommendations shall be considered with the construction documents. Consult with NCDOT on potential road improvements along Marvin School Road. Require a detailed lighting and landscaping plan with the construction documents to be reviewed by the village for compliance with Chapter 152, outdoor lighting of village ordinances. Easement for Marvin Loop will be dedicated per the site plan to the village. Consider fee in lieu consider fee in lieu or potential improvements of the Marvin Loop to be installed by developer. Require a maintenance plan and agreement for parking, landscaping, buffering, et cetera. Increase the rear buffer to 25 feet and installation of new fence along the property line contingent upon the Preserve HOA allowing the removal of fence on their property. Applicant will continue to work with the village and Preserve HOA on stormwater improvements. Do I need to include the public hearing? Okay. That is the motion. So we're going to go, Ken, we'll start with you. We'll go down the line. So you just need to vote a yes or a no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
All right. John?
Yes.
All right, so our motion carries because I am hopeful that you guys are going to help solve some of these stormwater issues. So, thank you.
Chair, hold on,
Thank you very much.
Kelly, I would like to also admit, you guys need to recommend the land use and consistency statement.
Where is that? Oh, my lord, okay. Oh, like all of this from the village council finds the proposed, not the village council.
So basically, the motion would be that the planning board recommends the following land use consistency reasonable statement to the council. So that's drafted as it is the council. Does that make sense?
I think so. Okay, so the okay. Yep. All right, so also the motion to recommend the following land use consistency and reasonableness statement for consideration and recommendation from the planning board and of adoption by the village council. The statement includes, the village council finds that the proposed rezoning of the 2.94 acre property located at 10018 Marvin School Road, Marvin, North Carolina 28173, further identified by parcel number 06-225012 from rural residential to Marvin Heritage District commercial only, is consistent with the goals and recommendations of the Village of Marvin 2020 Land Use Plan and the Marvin Heritage District Small Area Plan. The Village of Marvin 2020 Land Use Plan designates this area as the Marvin Heritage District, and the Marvin Heritage District Small Area Plan further designates the subject property as the Marvin Heritage District commercial only. The scale of the development is consistent with these adoption plans. Furthermore, this development is consistent with the goals and purpose of the plan by the following: cultivating a sense of community and creating a gathering place within the Heritage District, B1 and D1, maintaining rural character and heritage, B2, C.1, D.2, and E.2, providing development adjacent to existing neighborhoods that is compatible in terms of intensity, scale, and architecture, providing conservation land or fee in lieu for future greenway connections and additional pedestrian-oriented amenities, creating a walkable, compact core of neighborhood-friendly commercial, retail, and public uses and spaces, proposing and further incorporation of appropriate traffic calming strategies, and providing shared parking solutions, options, and future vehicular connectivity within the district. The proposed rezoning of 10018 Marvin School Road, parcel number 06-225012 from rural residential to Marvin Heritage District commercial only, is reasonable and is in the public interest because it promotes the goals and recommendations of the adopted 2020 Land Use Plan, Marvin Heritage District Small Area Plan, and any other officially adopted plans. End quote. There's a typo at the very end. Instead of either, it's other. Just FYI. That was a mouthful. I should get bonus Whataburger.
Yeah, you did great.
Okay, well,
There's a motion on the table.
all in favor. Oh, I thought that was just attached to it. Okay, so all in favor. All right.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you. Sorry for but once again, per the MDO, you guys also have to make that recommended land use consistency. So you don't have to read it in full next time. I'll check with the attorney and make sure, like, if it's proposed draft like that, if you guys, the motion can just be as presented
All right.
to help you out next time.
And if you need us, let us know. We'd be happy to continue to help bridge conversations. Well,
Okay.
hopefully, yeah. And we can talk more, but we can talk more about it. You and I can talk more about, anyway. We need to move on to new business, discussion and recommendation of zoning map amendment application 2025-2. So this is the map portion.
Yes, this is the rezoning that I kind of mentioned at the last meeting. I believe the applicant's online. It's a very straightforward rezoning, meaning that the subject property is there located off of Marvin School Road. It's approximately 3 acres. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property from rural residential to SFR1, essentially to subdivide to create 1 additional lot. Based off the lot dimensions and everything, they can only get 1 additional lot, where, you know, if you're looking at raw acreage, yeah, you would think you'd be able to get 2. There's not enough road frontage for a second additional lot to comply. So basically, if approved, they would be allowed to subdivide the property for an additional lot. I don't really, do I need to go through this kind of full staff? I mean, it's, once again, it's kind of a straightforward rezoning. The applicant had held their neighborhood meeting and approximately had 1 additional person other than the applicant at the meeting. Essentially, the how do I say, summary of that meeting basically actually got turned to floodplain and other stuff on the adjoining or the adjacent property. So there wasn't really any direct like comment, feedback, concerns from the resident that attended regarding the specific rezoning request.
And this is a family-owned property that is the recommended, well, the use would also be for, they want it for family members?
Yes, that is the intent. But once again, you still have to look at if rezoned, the property gets the whole use. But that's where, in this case, once again, if rezoned to SFR1, there is no way for them to get an additional 3rd lot, for 3 total lots. Yeah. The only, I mean,
Yep.
so.
Are there any questions or concerns? Any questions for the applicants? This does not seem to be a money-grabbing type of rezoning.
It's still over 1 acre.
Yep, yeah, it's almost 2. So I know Ken has just stepped out.
Do note that for the record.
Even without him, if we make a motion, do we need to wait for him, or can we make a motion?
You do not, if you leave the room, procedurally, you do not. If you leave the room unexcused, you are counted as a yes vote under North Carolina law.
Okay, he would vote yes anyway, I'm pretty sure, so, all right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and, let's see, so the rezoning motion would be.
That one should be.
So the motion on the table for a yes/no vote would be to recommend approval of zoning map amendment 2025-2 and find that the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the recommendation and goals of the Village of Marvin 2020 Land Use Plan, other officially adopted plans, village plans, and is reasonable in the public interest. I don't have to read that whole other thing, do I? Oh, thank God. All right, so it is a yes/no vote.
Aye.
Aye. John?
Aye.
All right, so moved. And, all right, moving on to discussion of recommendation zoning text amendment 2025-1. Did, this is going to be the group of text amendments?
Yes.
Okay, did everyone get a chance to meet with Hunter to discuss what this is all about?
This provides clarity. Yeah, so we're very concise. The language provides no vagueness, so.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, and to.
Okay, would you like to just?
I'll
do
go
we-
through them, and especially some of the changes based off the feedback originally discussed with planning board. So these are kind of a slew of text amendments, and got you guys' initial comments, feedback based off research. We are proposing a couple, these revisions to the MDO. First one being swimming pools. It was kind of brought up with, especially for, this was a Rayleigh Miller kind of question was regarding setbacks of pools. In short, the original proposal, draft proposal from staff had a 10-foot. It has been amended, or the proposed amendment now reads that the change it's still 15 feet when located within any single family or rural residential district, so it has no change to any existing residential. And then adding the language, in all other circumstances, pools shall be located a minimum of 10 feet from any property line. That is basically stating for any really new project, because that's applying to any mixed use or potential TNDO, any existing residential, even, for example, the Heritage at Marvin. They specifically, as part of their conditional zoning, had pool setbacks in their conditions, so they're locked into that. So that doesn't even change it for them. This would basically only currently apply to the Rayleigh Miller rezoning if it is approved. Any questions on that? Okay, the second change, as kind of we discussed, is based off of some of the feedback and stuff from the previous rezoning process, requiring a TIA to be part of rezoning submittals for new development. This draft language is, I mean, pretty in-depth, but basically it's given the flexibility to the village to require a TIA for during rezoning considerations, and it kind of outlines what's required for that study. Furthermore, it gives you guys another land use tool, in my opinion. So any questions on that? There were a few comments, feedback from the engineer, basically kind of defining some terms and some things. In short, we'll probably add those to definitions in Article 3 as a future text amendment, just to kind of have those clarifications, but the language that's presented, I will note that the only change is on the second to last page is the zoning districts that were highlighted in that proposed draft are now consistent with our zoning district. So that's the only kind of change from what's in the packet to what I've made so far. Does that make sense? Okay. The next change is kind of then getting into the Heritage District. If you guys recall, when we adopted the MDO, we brought in that Heritage District language from a form-based code. Certain elements of it were brought into the small area plan, which then kind of created some inconsistencies and confusion in how the language was reading. In short, what this is proposing is taking out those tables for RO and commercial only, mixed use, and civic that's currently in Article 8 for the Heritage District, and unifying them, meaning you still have those sub-district classifications, but it takes out those lot type classifications, and it generalizes those setbacks across the board. That's really the only change. Those setbacks are consistent with what's already in the language. It's just, like I said, generalizing them. Well, it depends for which sub-district. It depends for which sub-district for the setbacks. So, for example, like in the commercial only, certain lot and building types set at a minimum of a 10-foot front setback, but then there was one that had an 85-foot front setback. So what's being proposed is it generalizing at a minimum of 40 and maximum of 85 for the front setback. But then even the same thing on the rear and sides are the exact same from what was in the old language. It's just, like I said, the confusion was you had these building and lot types that were referenced in the old form-based code. It made sense, but then when it got brought over, those lot types got put in the plan, and so there was a lot of inconsistencies there. So, like I said, all this is doing is taking the same exact kind of and generalizing it and getting away from those lot type and letting those lot types be more design and like how the site's set up with the footprint and all that other stuff, but the setbacks are generalized across proposed development. Does that make sense? Okay.
Heritage District.
It's just for the Heritage District, yeah. Okay, next proposed change gets into some clarification in 8.1, which there were a few uses, once again, that were specifically in the Heritage District form-based code, which was like cafe. You then had restaurant, which you then had restaurant with drive-through as an accessory use. There was some confusion, meaning that, for example, in the restaurant, if you look at that SIC code, it covers a lot of things. But just for clarification purposes, basically allowing cafe in every single district of restaurant is already allowed in, which is TNDO, Main Street, mixed use 1 and 2, and NC commercial, which there's currently no properties zoned any of those. In Marvin, you have that one current rezoning proposal for mixed use, and that's it. Same change with restaurant and adding the word without drive-through, so then it's kind of clear on, you have restaurants with the drive-through and restaurants without. Once again, Heritage District does not allow for drive-throughs as an accessory use, so there's no, this is once again kind of following the same change of just allowing it in the same districts that I've mentioned before. Next change is also dealing with the drive-through. In the table, you had drugstore, pharmacy with drive-through, or sorry, it just said drugstore, pharmacy. And so then you had pharmacy, drugstore, and just kind of adding clarification, once again, they are permitted with a drive-through in those same districts. So again, it was specifically a Heritage District kind of implementation, kind of carrying it in. We don't allow drive-throughs in the Heritage District already, so there was kind of some confusion in that table of how that read.
So you took out the drive-through in the uses for Heritage District?
That was already a part of the regulations. It was in the use table, there were uses in the old form-based code that got merged into this table that overlapped with already uses that we had, but it then created some confusion in regards to, for example, in the Rayleigh Miller project, so this is kind of clarifying, like, it's already permitted in my interpretation, but then it really clarifying that it's limiting any type of vagueness or misinterpretation in the future. Said it's not changing any really thing that's not permitted. It's just changing some clarification in the use identification. All right. Next change is to amend the detached house building type. In the old ordinance prior to the MDO, the maximum height for residential buildings was 35 feet. In the MDO, it's 30 feet. Once again, we looked at a bunch of research here. Staff's basically proposing that we go back to 35 feet. And also, we're adding language to clarify the graphic that's in the MDO regarding accessory structure height and setback. Any questions there? Okay. The last proposed change is then regarding attached housing, which once again is townhomes. This is, once again, would be specific to the mixed-use districts, which is part of the proposed rezoning. In the MDO, attached principal building height is 25 feet. The proposed change is basically to allow it to 45 feet in the mixed-use 1 and 2 district. Correct.
I thought we were discussing 40 feet instead, now you.
No, it's always 40. That's the same. I think the 40 feet might have been buffer.
What we were talking about was 40 feet. I don't remember 45.
When, this is the same change that was discussed. In short, look at it this way. Once again, this is opening that up to a max, like a max height. Any really proposed development would be going through the conditional rezoning process, where if that height is being concerned, similar to the Rayleigh Miller, like where you have cross sections and it's kind of showing the height differential to make that decision. This is something that's consistent with, based off our research, some other municipalities, and once again, it would only apply to the mixed-use 1 and 2 district. That being, for example, townhomes are technically permitted in the Heritage District, only a part of the site-specific plan, so there's no current development that has townhomes, but this doesn't then allow, if they were ever proposed in the Heritage District, they're capped at 25 feet. Same thing for any TNDO, future development, all that stuff. So it's just changing to any potential mixed-use 1 or 2 development.
But then it becomes part of the zoning at 45.
Correct, but once again, there's no property currently zoned this. This, like, once again, yes, you have a current application going through this process, but it's conditional zoning. So if that is like kind of what we're discussing with the cross-section and looking at that in any future project, or like even this one, that is something that you look at and can potentially request that the height be less than. You can never ask in a conditional zoning for the height to be greater than the minimum, or sorry, the maximum, if that makes sense.
So, okay, walk me through this for a minute. So with buffers, we have set 20, 30, whatever. And now you're talking about, and that's what it is. And so we can, if it's conditional, yes, we can request, but technically the zoning is what it is. And if they meet the zoning, then are we required pretty much to say, yeah, go ahead?
I mean, no, I mean, that's part of, I mean, it's still part of the land use decision. This specific one is, like I said, being requested by the applicant because that's what their elevations are being proposed at. 25 feet is very low when you look at it across the board for townhomes. And so in this specific scenario, it's being proposed 45, that's where some of the research, and that's what their elevations are at. If the planning board and council do not want in this development or any future one, and this is once again, if this text amendment gets approved, then, now it becomes part of the zoning, like you said, what you guys would be then doing is you guys could request the building height to be capped. Once again, it has to be agreed upon, but that could also hurt any application's chances of potentially being not approved. Specifically in this case, like once again, if that's something that would then require the applicant to revise their proposed elevations and building design for those townhomes being proposed in the Rayleigh Miller project.
So why would we adjust what we already have at 25? Can't they just come in and request what they want?
No, because you can't go above the maximum. So in the ordinance now, it's currently 25. They can't request 45. But if we have 45, we can negotiate lower. You always can go lower or less than what the ordinance requires, or in theory, greater. I mean, like for example, in a buffer situation, the minimum is 20. We can always ask for them to do more, but they can't come in if their minimum was 20 saying we want to do 10.
I see.
Yeah. So that's all the proposed changes. There will be kind of some additional fixes that staff's working on. Once again, it's some formatting and some clarification stuff, but potentially back on the June agenda. Is there any questions about these proposed in this submittal?
I could have sworn it's 40 feet. I'm telling you, that's what we did. I don't remember 45.
So you're saying that from the ground, it can go up 45 feet?
Correct.
That's how tall it can be?
Maximum, yes. What the building height does, and I know, John, I mean, we kind of talked about this with the single family, like it provides some different and variation of roof pitch and mean height, so it gives you some more architectural kind of thing. It's not necessarily saying that it's going to go to 45 feet. It's not saying that it's going to be like a flat roof 45 foot across the board. It's creating a little variable in the architectural kind of design of the roof pitch. If you go look at the elevations for the Rayleigh Miller project, like it's not 45 feet across the board. It has some sloping and variations, but their proposed height for those buildings is 45 feet. So that's why this is kind of being requested a part of these. Since staff was already working on text amendments in general, they requested this change to then for their proposal. So again, if it doesn't get approved that way, then you would be looking at, they would have to revise their elevations as part of their rezoning submittal.
How many stories is that?
So, not necessarily. In the specific rezoning petition, you have the garage on the first floor and then living space. So you have a 2-story, maybe 2.5. So it's not necessarily like 4 stories of livable space. It's not necessarily 4 stories all the way up. It's still would be a 2-story townhome, potentially with either a bonus room or something, but it's not straight up 4 stories.
So the height is to the eave?
To the average of the mean roof, yes.
Okay.
It's the average of the eave. It's not
Which-
the top of the eave. And they are 3-story townhomes.
The 2 middle ones, I believe.
Middle ones are 3 stories. And then some. I mean, it looks like, I don't know if that's just decorative. That piece on the top. I mean, the roof lines are, I understand the roof line argument, but
It just seems like a high number. Yeah, it seems like a high number to me.
Didn't you look at all the other cities?
Yeah, so in your guys' packet, there is research of the 10 municipalities we looked at. Certain municipalities regulated by story. I think Monroe, for example, had a maximum of 3-story for attached housing. Certain have height. Waxhaw is 45 feet. but it was anywhere between 30 to 50. I think there was Charlotte or one municipality had 50. When you think of it in terms of this specific development, their commercial building max height is 50 feet too. So the commercial buildings. So it's kind of would be in line for this specific proposal with the commercial. So you're not really, because you still have some grade differential and all this other stuff, but once again, in any other situation, it's going to be going through the same rezoning process where they provide elevations. It really, in my opinion, is providing them from an architectural standpoint to get creative. Not saying that, once again, you guys have to recommend approval or council has to approve it from that standpoint, but it's at 25 feet, a townhome can only really look one way.
All right, well, I mean, understand that commercials at 50, that's something. They're gonna be right next to each other. Okay, anyone have any other questions?
Sure.
But Bradley Miller's specifically asking for this height for their plan. Riley Miller?
Well, I mean, they are, but once again, that's where
This
we've
is
already
John Sohn's
reviewed,
product.
we've already reviewed the elevations, and I mean, that would be then something then, I would want to know if this is concerned, and definitely that's why we are requesting like the cross-section for the buffer on top of the variation in the height. Because where those townhomes are at, there is some slight grade differential, meaning that Somerset hits its higher, not all across the board, but definitely in a good amount of the slope. So it's like, we could look at kind of more in depth of their project of that next month on that cross section and kind of showing those height variations. Correct.
Yeah.
Still has to come in front of us.
Yeah, all right.
Doesn't do anything.
All right, so we will be recommending these. Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You want to make it? Sure.
Oh, well, sorry, there is one other thing I forgot to mention. The neighborhood meeting stuff. Also in your packet is the changes to the neighborhood meeting. This was previously discussed during the joint meeting. In short, the proposed change does, there's roughly three. First being for conventional, so you have conventional rezonings like the one that the Marvin School, the 3-acre property, because we had 2 Marvin School roads, which is kind of very straightforward. We are recommending that in conventional rezonings that they're not required, that they're recommended. It kind of gives staff discretion depending on the submittal to require it. I mean, because once again, they're going to listen to staff's recommendation on that. And it still gives you the planning board and council, even if they don't elect to do it, to request one. And so, but you then run in where you don't have a situation like we did for this, zoning map amendment 25-2, where you have one person show up, and then, I mean, that's because that's staff time, all this other stuff, where, but the proposed change, what we would do, we would still notify all property owners within that 1,300 feet that a rezoning application has been submitted, where then any adjoining property owners aren't just, notified 2 weeks before the public hearing, where they can at least reach out to staff or access our website to get the information on the rezoning submittal. Any questions on the conventional side?
I do have a question on the conventional side, like, in the one that we approved tonight, like, that makes total sense. In ones that have gone before us beforehand, where there really needed to be.
Correct. So.
How do you deal with that? Because they can submit through the conventional process or the conditional process, and if they don't want to hear feedback, they can go the conventional route.
They can. I think what we are advising applicants in those situations where you have more acreage, where a site plan, because once again, you can't tie a site plan to a conventional rezoning. they're getting the zoning of the property, and then obviously if they were to develop it, they have to then develop it within the parameters of what the MDO allows for that district and follow that applicable process either for a major or minor subdivision. Conditional zonings is where you have more detail. You have a site-specific plan, most likely sometimes building elevation. I mean, you have more detail put into the project itself. So a neighborhood meeting is being required for those because there's more that can kind of be discussed on the vision and all that. With that being said, when you have property that could probably be quote-unquote developed more than what's being conveyed, for example, if you have a 10-acre tract and they're like, hey, we just want to subdivide this for our kid, but it could in theory maybe get 9 to 10 lots. We're recommending that they apply to go ahead and do a conditional rezoning. We already have done this with one applicant, and you guys will have a future conditional zoning application probably in the next month or two, kind of for your first review. But it's really in the best benefit for applicants to do that because knowing, kind of similar with previous rezonings, the questions, the vagueness, the uncertainty.
And I get, and I'm sorry, I know I've heard you say that before, and I totally get why it's in their best interest. But if they still go the conventional route, and it really does need to have neighboring properties input, as if we don't have a requirement in there, which I totally get, and this is like a one-off, like most of the time it's gonna be like the one tonight. As a planning board, when they come before us and would you tell us that it was recommended that they do the conditional route and they chose to do the conventional route? And
Yes,
then
that
we
would.
can turn it down and then they can.
That would be, yeah, that'd be something what would be conveyed. Once again, if you have one of those situations arise, like I said, the way the language is written where it says it's recommended to have one, it really allows staff to kind of use its discretion, saying even though it says recommended, staff's recommending it, so therefore you should do it. Meaning not necessarily go the conditional route, but at least have a neighborhood meeting. But it kind of gives a little authority where it's like, yes, simple ones don't necessarily need to, because it's an applicant-driven meeting. That's the other big key of this, is that in conventional rezonings, you're most likely going to have like a property owner that is trying to do something like the past application where it's very straightforward. There's not much more that they can do other, if approved. But then you're putting them to run a meeting, provide a meeting, all that stuff. When it's not most conditional. When you're doing a larger development, you're going to have some type of home builder, land developer, engineer, something that has a little bit more expertise than a normal kind of property owner to kind of go into greater depth. So that's where, like I said, the way it's written gives staff that discretion to require it, but we still are going to be pushing for conditional zoning. The way then the MDO works is that, and I think, we kind of discussed this at the joint meeting too, is that based off, the rural resident, those properties, like, they don't have to approve every rezoning. And that's something like the conditional zoning gives us the authority to have that site-specific plan. It has us the authority to kind of tie certain conditions. Certain conditions include architectural design standards, so like elevations of homes, where you don't have that authority in conventional rezoning. And most applicants can probably attest to this, that it's better to go ahead and do the conditional route to get everything, that vision and everything kind of locked in, because it improves their chances of probably getting approved, because I'm not saying it's going to, but it at least gives that information that people are asking for, and you can tie it with it.
Yeah, I guess my only issue is that with that, you're gonna have people who are looking to just subdivide and sell off with no regard to their neighbors or their HOA rules, which we can't get involved in. Yes, it's already happened. And all of those neighbors, I hope they have the money to sue. Because that's their only route. So that's my only issue, is the one that we dealt with tonight. Totally get it, easy peasy. To me, that should almost be administrative in a way. But like this other one where they're going to go conventional because they want to avoid that. That's where what is how do we keep people from doing that? Because to me, that's the easy route, especially for people who just want to subdivide and make money.
Well, that gets into us, like I said, updating our land use plan, which we will be beginning that process at the beginning of July. To be.
But how many are going to go through?
I can't. I don't know.
You can recommend, but they don't have to listen to you, right? You can recommend, we think you need to do conditional, but if if they don't want to have a neighborhood meeting, then they could go.
Correct, but I will say most of the time, the applicants are going to take staff's feedback into consideration.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's in their best interest. And
Is there a way to put parameters on it, like on the conventional?
no. What do you, like, as in, you can only resubmit to a conventional rezoning if your property's X, and you can, like, you can't. People have property rights and have a right to quote-unquote pursue what they want to do with their property. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen, and you gotta have that route with either conventional. Once again, why you're seeing these happen is because under the old ordinance, they could come and do a minor subdivision, which is technically all administratively approved anyway. So this is allowing for at least that rezoning to be triggered, where yes, it gives it an opportunity to go through the process and have that public participation and allow for planning board and council to view the application and make the recommendation and then the final decision by the village council after a public hearing is conducted, instead of it just being an administrative minor subdivision approval type thing. John?
Yeah, you know, if we make this change and someone comes along and, you know, and we feel like they're trying to slide something through, we don't have to approve it. We can recommend not approving, can't we?
That's correct. And like I said, that's where, yes, I know we struggles with the recommendation board, but that's where then the update to the land, or doing this new, I don't know if I want to call it an update or just a brand new, like more in-depth land use plan. It gives you and council more tools in the toolbox to say, hey, it's not recommended because it's inconsistent, because it's recommended that this is agriculture or very low density, which we would define that. And then therefore, it actually then kind of makes, in short, kind of another hurdle for council, meaning that if they're trying to prove something that's inconsistent with the land use plan, they have to justify why. Where if you don't, you don't have to, like type thing. So it does kind of add a little bit more protection, and it gives that the new land use plan, like I said, is going to give you the planning board, it's going to give staff, it's going to give council more tools to make better decisions for growth and future development. Because we lack that right now, in my opinion, in our current land use plan.
But you get
Yeah.
why some of us are hesitant about this particular one, because there's going to be people who
Could we
abuse
maybe
it because they've already done it.
table it? Like, could we maybe table this one and talk more about it and do the rest of them and just come back to this one in another meeting?
Or why not approve it at 40? If it has to come 40, then you 45, they can bring it up at 45. It's the same thing.
He said
No,
you
no,
can't
no.
go up the-
You can't go up.
No.
can't go up.
But are you saying table it because of the neighborhood meeting language?
Yes.
Or- I mean, the only other change is, like I said, we can still require it. It's not, in all our research, if you look at that table, most municipalities only require it for conditional zoning, and that's because somebody can have 10 acres and say, they just want to, like I said, subdivide for one property. That's what they can convey in the neighborhood meeting, but you can't tie them to that. And so it's kind of counterproductive, because it's, like, for example, in the previous one that is being mentioned, like, you have a site plan and that is showing a vision of what they're trying to do with the property, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're gonna do. It could be, when I say worse, I mean, it could look different because it still has to comply with the minimum lot size. So it's like the amount of lots and stuff, like, that's why I always try to say, hey, this is conventional. Based off of this information, if approved, this is the maximum yield that they can get. Because I'm looking at it from road frontage and acreage, because that's what all goes into making those lots comply. It's going to be your bigger, weird tracks that, yes, there's going to be uncertainty, but that's why I say, okay, if you have 10 acres and you have, what would that be, 1,300 feet of road frontage, because it's 130 minimum width, it's 10 lots. So, yeah, in theory, they could do that, but it could be less. I mean, but it wouldn't be more, but it's hard then trying to, in the public engagement process, get them, showing a site plan then raises questions. And those questions aren't going to be answered. And so I think it creates a lot more uncertainty, where in the conditional side of that and pushing them towards a conditional does allow for more information to be provided by the applicant. And
Oh, no, I think a lot of us agree with that, like, but if they problem is that they don't go conditional. But I guess we still have the right to turn it down.
Yeah, and in the MDO specifically, the council, it says that the planning board during their recommendation and/or I know specifically for council can, after a public hearing is conducted, they can request that a neighborhood meeting be conducted by the applicant or additional neighborhood meeting. So it's still, even if they don't quote unquote listen to staff's recommendation of doing a neighborhood meeting or go in the conditional route, council can make that a requirement as part of their motion at the time of consideration. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that can come from planning board too, meaning planning board, did not recommend a neighborhood meeting be conducted. And I think that would, council's gonna kind of probably is going to listen to that recommendation, especially if staff's recommending it too.
Okay. All right.
So, and then the last change, like I said, is on the conditional side. All it is that requiring a neighborhood meeting report to be submitted and kind of laying those parameters out on top of if in with that 1,300-foot perimeter, if it abuts if that touches a part of a subdivision, the whole subdivision has to be notified. Those are all the changes. I will let you guys now discuss and potentially make a motion.
Good with this 45? Go forward? Okay. Motion on the table to recommend approval of zoning text amendment 2025-1.
It's a yes, no, up and down.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
John?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so moved.
Unanimous.
All right. Is there a planner's report? That this place is aging you?
No,
Yeah,
like I
we're barely
said,
surviving.
the only
It's been
thing
a
I
busy
forgot to
month.
mention earlier is that for the conditional rezoning that was recommended by the planning board tonight, that public hearing will not be until the July 8th council meeting. Just due to kind of scheduling, I'm going to be on vacation the next 2 weeks, and just so applicants agreed to wait. So that will be the July meeting, not the upcoming June council meeting, and we'll have all that updated on our website. The conventional rezoning will be on the June or for the June council meeting. But other than that, staff will work on getting with some of the feedback and stuff that you guys on the rezoning applications tonight and get that information for you for the next meeting.
Cool. All right, let's, no action items, board member comments. Ken, I know you're going to have a lot to say.
Staff, thank you very much for Marvin Wise. I really love that. You guys do a great job with that. Thank you very much. And everything else that you do to prepare for us. So thank you very much.
And I would add that you guys are definitely have tough skin with the amount of misinformation and just disrespectful comments and things that are hurled your way that are unwarranted. So I apologize on behalf of Marvin and our neighbors for this junk that gets hurled at you.
We'll take it.
Nothing for me, thank you, staff. I want to commend Hunter, thanks for that pre-meeting we had. We need to do more of those because that helped move along the process. So I'll make myself available to kind of do those pre-meetings.
Good point.
Yeah, like I said, I want to make sure you guys understand everything, have the information where it makes these meetings, I think, more effective, where it gives us a chance to kind of research or get the information prior so we can go ahead and have questions addressed. So yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that on some bigger projects.
I would answer that as we do it at OMB or something like that. So.
No, Whataburger.
Whataburger, there you go.
Yes.
It's in Marvin, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
was like, OMG,
Yes.
that's near my warehouse, but
Yes.
that's one I've been
Whataburger.
one time, so, yeah. No, Angel?
Well done, guys. Thank you.
All right, so now,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor? There's no seconding.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I know. I was up at 6, which is not normal for me.
We won't have another one like this for a while, right? Not until the Ray Lee Miller